May 31, 2022 meeting of the Marquette City Commission is now called to order at 6 p.m. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bonzal.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Hanley.
Here.
Commissioner Hill.
Here.
Commissioner Stonehouse.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mayor.
Here.
And Mayor Smith.
Here. Thank you. We have an agenda this evening, Commissioners. Do we have a motion on this agenda? Commissioner Stonehouse?
Motion to accept the agenda is written, Your Honor.
And do we have a second? Commissioner Bonzal?
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. I have one announcement this evening. I don't know if some of you saw in the news recently, the city of Marquette was recently recognized for environmental leadership. We've been recognized with gold status in the 2021 Michigan Green Communities. You can find out more on our website, but it's definitely an honor and something we've been striving towards with our strategic and master planning towards more climate change activities. So very proud of the work our commission, city staff especially, has done on this, and look forward to more positive change in the future. Thank you. All right, up next, we've got item number 1, appointments. We have 2 appointments on the docket here. Do we have a motion on these appointments, Commissioners? Commissioner Davis?
I move we appoint Lori Hosworth to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board for an unexpired term ending January 29th, 2025, and John Stewart to the Presque Isle Park Advisory Committee for an unexpired term ending April 1st, 2024.
And do we have a second? Commissioner Hanley?
I second that motion.
Any discussion, Commissioner Davis?
No, just very happy that they're willing to serve.
And Commissioner Hanley?
The same. It's really nice to see every week someone new on a different board, and I hope that this trend continues until we fill all of our boards.
Any other comments from the commission? Let's go ahead and take a vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Up next, reappointments, number 2 on the agenda. We just have one reappointment. Commissioner Hanley?
I motion that we reappoint Madeline Goodman to the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee for a term ending 6/1 of 25.
And a second. Commissioner Hill?
I second that motion.
Commissioner Hanley, any discussion?
I think Madeline will be a great asset to add to that group or to that committee, and I look forward to seeing what she puts forth.
And Commissioner Hill?
Agreed.
Any other discussion? All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Up next, we have our first public comment session of the evening. Public comments may not exceed 3 minutes per person. Please clearly state your name and physical address when addressing the commission. Please note we do have 5 public hearings tonight. You can find a copy of the agenda at the table at the back. If you're here to talk about one of these specific items, there will be time reserved under those items. If that's something you're here to talk about, you can do so at that point in time. And as a reminder, I do have a printout I wanted to read from. Just as a note for the public, when addressing the commission for public comment, you need to face the commission and you need to have a respectful tone and make sure that you are directing all comments towards us, not others in the audience. So if you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer that afterwards, but just be respectful, and the comments are towards us, not towards the public. All right, do we have anyone for public comment this evening? You just approach the podium right in the middle here, and you've got 3 minutes to do so. Name and physical address, please.
Annie Boujou. My name is Alex Cowles. I live at 109 Fisher Street here in Marquette. I am of the Eagle Clan in the Ojibwa tribe who originate in this area. Myself and members of the community are here to raise concerns surrounding the current state of the housing market and its effect on the local population. We have set out an online survey to gather public opinion to bring the voices of those who cannot be here today to the City Commission. We received 97 responses at the last time I checked. This far surpasses the national crisis in terms It has been steadily building over the span of a decade. Corporations like Verida come in, building high luxury condos, catering to those outside of the area. However, the people who make Marquette what it is are the people who live here full time, not the tourists, not the corporations, not the part-time residents. The working class people who live here full time should be the highest priority. I am calling on the City Commission to make decisions that benefit the community, not lining the pockets of those in power. They might have the money to make things happen, but you can't make things happen if you don't have a workforce. You can't have a workforce without having place for people in that demographic to live. Marquette will crumble under its own weight if we don't address the situation. We could limit the amount of rentals a person or corporation might own, limit or heavily tax short-term rentals, fight for universal rent control in the state of Michigan, which is illegal right now, and stop building condos for out-of-state companies who only want to milk Marquette dry of its cultural and physical resources. Myself and the members of the community have come here today to make the voices of citizens who have overwhelmingly been silenced. We have letters here that many of us will be reading. I'd like to start with our first entry. It feels like the city is actively making it as difficult as possible for young professionals and families to live here. The short-term greed will cost the city a healthy tax base and a community for the long run. I am a proud Ishpeming resident now and plan to be involved in that community, bringing my skills and getting to know my new town. I want to move forward instead of look back. However, I wanted to raise my family in Marquette to be involved in the community, to give back to the city that gave me so much. Most of my friends are in the same boat. Marquette will lose young families in exchange for short-term workers, Airbnbs, and second homeowners. Not exactly a strong community base, though there is room for them as well if we focus on everyone's needs, not just the special interests of our development company. The hospital deal is just proof of how any discussion of affordable housing has thus been lip service.
Yeah, it's been 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Christopher Leith. I live at 121 West Michigan Street, and I share Alex's concerns. And I grew up in this town. I moved away for a little while to pursue college and work. And when I came back, I was a bit surprised. I have nothing against development. In fact, I understand its necessity. But I was surprised in the way it was done. Taking opportunities away from locals and giving property and opportunities to non-locals. And now that I have said that, I'm going to continue where Alex left off. This hospital deal is just proof of how any discussion of the affordable housing has thus far been merely lip service. How long until the city commissioners who are renting can no longer afford the price hikes? How long will it take those who have housing stability to turn around and see that they no longer know their neighbors and that everyone who works to make the city a fun and artistic place to be lives elsewhere? From the second letter. My partner, a therapist in training, and I, a public school teacher, cannot afford a mortgage in the city limits and continually get outbid on the few houses we can afford. Our studio apartment rent has skyrocketed to the point where it's nearly 40% of our take-home income, our take-home pay. We moved to Marquette in 2014 with the hope of making this place our permanent home and contributing to this community after finishing our degrees. Instead, we are being priced out of the community by landlords, contractors, and developers. A community is supposed to put their people first. The lack of legislation meant to mitigate rental prices, keep landlords and developers from establishing a monopoly, and facilitating home ownership for residents in Marquette is criminal. And before moving on to the third letter, I would just like to say that I miss some things that I used to see in this town, and I think we have an opportunity to develop correctly, not shamefully.
Anyone else?
John Taylor, 2050 Presque Isle Avenue, number 26, Marquette. I will not continue with the reading, but I will emphasize Marquette has a dire shortage of affordable or income-based housing. Marquette enjoys the standard of living and beauty it does because of a vibrant labor class that makes many beautiful amenities possible we would not otherwise have. But with gas nearing $5 a gallon, commuting 20 to 30 miles a day for the privilege of entry-level employment in Marquette is not a financial option for the low-end wage earners that are building this community from the ground up. I wish to see Marquette grow and thrive. The course of our development in housing is not producing that outcome. As I look at these letters, one jumps out at me as someone complaining that they have a master's degree and their spouse has a PhD, both working full-time, and they cannot afford property in Marquette. Ladies and gentlemen, if we are building housing so expensive people with doctorate degrees cannot afford it, I would like to know what demographic we're building for, because retired rock stars and foreign oil barons you can't build a local economy on. And that's basically what we're building for at this rate. There would be good money and a good return on the investment in building large numbers of income-based and affordable housing in this city. I would recommend using the hospital site for this purpose. You may think that I'm barking up the wrong tree with this. Let me remind you, most of this commission told me that I was barking up the wrong tree and we'd never see a financial windfall if we allowed dispensaries here. You're welcome. I would very much like to emphasize that this, again, is a worthwhile use of our time and our land. But I will also emphasize my own comments from these papers, that personally, I believe I'm wasting my time addressing this committee tonight. I do not believe anyone here, regardless of experience, income level, or political affiliation, is willing to take action on this issue. I came a long way to waste my breath tonight. Please do not let that be the case. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Commission. Mike Smith, UP Construction Council, 130 West Washington. I come to you tonight to discuss item number 9 under new business, the Superior Shoreline Project. I know that you have all received at least 1 or 2 communications from me regarding this, and I just wanted to reiterate these in public. So the big concern for me is the vast disparity between the costs associated with the project being considered by the low bid contractor. Based on city bid specs, I believe the following issues should be investigated so the commission can make an informed decision. The city was very specific regarding 3 complete topography surveys to be completed pre, after excavation, and final. How is the low bidder performing these? Bid tab items. Item number 6, how is the contaminated material being managed? Item number 14, how is dust control being managed? Item 44, how is the signage being managed? Item 45, how is the installation of monitoring benchmarks being managed? Item 46, how is the requirement of the turbidity curtain being replaced 3 times over the course of the construction being managed? This is a pretty big safety measure, folks. This is what keeps that silt out of the lake. We want to keep that contained, right? Make sure that it's safe, that we're not having any ecological issues. Multiple tabs as it relates to the procurement, quality, and placement of stone, which is to be placed into the lake with a clamshell, not dumped and pushed in with a dozer. How is this being managed? Are there plans to reuse existing stone, and is it compliant with the specs? These are all very important issues. I hope that you will consider these. There are, again, significant discrepancies in cost for the items that I just mentioned, and it cannot simply be explained away with the bidder can procure stone from their local pit at a reduced cost. As you know, the devil is in the details. Please consider these items. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
Tony Boyle, 401 West Michigan Street. You know, I'm here to just speak on just affordability of our community in general. By the way, the letters are now numbering at 101. That is more than half of what Viridia got for their RFQ in a month's time span. We put this together between, working full-time jobs, managing our mental and emotional health, and some of us trying to find housing before becoming homeless. So I think that's pretty great. Addressing this issue is no one is coming here being like, hey, give us the magic bullet, wave your wand, solve the problem. We recognize that this will take a holistic approach as a community as diverse as ours has been requires diverse approaches. What we are, and myself, are very upset about is that all the development is being concentrated at one end. When you concentrate a single product, in farming they call that monocropping. And that leads to the degradation of the soil, loss of biodiversity, loss of soil, water runoff, chemical runoff, all sorts of terrible things. And we see that metaphor applies. We see that across the spectrum here with the hollowing out of our community. We are looking down the barrel of 2 lost generations. We are looking down the barrel of a second recession. That was a lot of fun going through the one in 2008. Very excited for this one now. Can't wait for the next generation to come up and have even less opportunities. The only reason I have a house is because I'm able to rent out rooms to friends. Without them, I would not have a place to live. For the longest time, I would not have been able to afford rent. And that is no longer an option for people. It's a common refrain, Actually, on the topic of affordability and a holistic approach to affordability, I saw in here that my neighbor is actually being charged $240 for letting his grass grow too long. The dude has a walker. I don't talk finances with him, but I assume that he's on a fixed income as he is very old. He's a very nice guy. Now he owes you $240 because, yeah, I guess aesthetics are more important than people actually living in their homes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Quinn Aspen, 1536 West Ridge Street in Marquette here. I don't really have anything that I personally want to add. I just wanted to read out some of these responses that they had received. So this one says, I am disabled and make $500 a year too much on SSDI for low-income housing. I do not qualify for anything else because I make too little. I've had to move 6 times and about to move a 7th since suffering a massive stroke in 2017. 3 of those moves were directly related to the owners raising the rent due to market value. I currently pay 75% of my income for housing. It is completely unsustainable and unreasonable. How is it that I am considered poverty level income, but I do not qualify for low income housing? How ironic that the reason I make the amount I make on Social Security is because I worked so hard my whole life and paid into the Social Security tax that determines my income today. I make the maximum amount you can make on Social Security, and it has disqualified me from low income housing. Say anything to me that makes sense of this. Tell me anything that will help me understand the system. This is my community. The idea of being forced out of it makes me literally ill. I don't even know how I would exist anywhere else, especially with my disability and the need for my support system, doctors, etc. The essence of our community is the people that live in it. The ones that fundraise, volunteer, build our trails, groom them, pick up our beaches after wild parties from tourists. The sooner you realize that Marquette is special because of who is in it, the sooner you'll realize the emergent importance of making sure these communities can sustain the lifestyles that we have cultivated for decades. What does Marquette look like without families? Because many are leaving because they can't afford $500,000 houses or $2,000 a month rent. What does it look like without students that can afford housing? Heck, when the professors can't even find or afford housing. What does it look like without restaurants because they don't have staff? What does it look like when nobody to work the window at the coffee shop or your favorite bakery? What does it look like without the locals that walk the beaches in the morning to pick up the glass in the summer left over by thoughtless partiers? What does it look like without the endless stream of fundraisers and events propelling the overall health and success of our nonprofits, businesses, and individuals? Affording housing is not just a people's problem. It is absolutely vital to the sustainability of our community and its growth. Are you even considering at all what the real bones of Marquette are? It's us, and you're pushing us all away. And I'm running out of time, but I would like to say that I do like that one specifically because it kind of raises a good issue of we are a college town, and our students cannot afford to live here. Even after graduation, they cannot make enough to pay the rent in the town that they want to go to school at. What are we supposed to do after we graduate if we can't find a place to live?
I'm Anna Martin. I live at 401 West Michigan Street in Marquette. I am here to talk about my experience as a Marquette resident and an NMU alumna in order to express concern with the pre-selection of Redia for development without a real commitment to affordable housing. I have considered NMU to be one of the best universities in Michigan due to the relatively low tuition and cost of living combined with world-class faculty. This makes NMU a great choice for all sorts of people, especially those of us who came here looking for a second chance like myself. The rising cost of living and the current housing crisis in Marquette are going to make it harder and harder for students with hardships, or any students really, to attend NMU, which is tragic. And the process of gentrification will only make this worse. I bring this up because Verdia has stated that they would like to provide housing for graduate students and professors. I worry that they don't understand just how affordable their housing must be in order for it to be a viable choice for graduate students. I just finished my master's degree elsewhere at a different university. I made about $16,000 a year before taxes. Assuming Northern graduate students are compensated similarly, they realistically cannot afford much more than $400 a month in rent. The additional housing supply that may come from this deal won't necessarily lower prices in the city of Marquette, and some thought should be put to how this will impact the university community. I wonder why can't we wait until Marquette County can acquire the MGH property and take an approach that is community-driven to come up with a solution that meets the needs of people who already live here.
Anyone else for public comment?
My name is Miranda Golke. I live here in Marquette at 109 Fisher Street. So I'm here to talk about the Virta project that is potentially going to be taking over for the previous hospital. So at the public speaking press conference that they had back in December, they stated that they were going to start out the cost of the condos that they're planning to make there at $279,000. This is not attainable for a large portion of this community. In 2019, the median annual income of a workforce member here in Marquette was $43,977. Based off of the current common interest rate that for mortgage loans of 5.8%, the largest, if they have good credit score, the largest that they would be able to attain for a mortgage loan would be at $181,500. Back in 2019, where I collected this data, the average property value was $189,000. So even the average person here in Marquette wouldn't even be able to afford what the average property cost would be considered. From the last 2 years of the interest rates and everything going up and the cost of housing, I can't even imagine like what the rate is right now to be considered for the average property cost. But either way, $279,000 $1,000 is not attainable. This is not going to help assist with the ongoing issue of the housing crisis that we are having here in Marquette. There are people that are the majority of the workforce. I believe we have a graph, but only 21% of the workforce community here that took our survey in the last week reported that they would actually be able to afford to live here. That is too much. That percentage is too high. We need to put our focus towards getting attainable housing for the workforce, not marketing to people who can afford a second house or that are not from this base community. The workforce are the people that support our community here. We need to keep making sure that we support them back.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Ryan Lubinsky, 712 Norwood Street. I'm here mostly to talk about some of the experiences I've had with finding housing up here, particularly last year, where I went through a 3-month search to try and find a place to live, 2 of which I was homeless, offering a $1,000 cash reward to anyone who could find a place for me once I signed a lease. Going around taping notes onto doors of empty-looking houses with my name and phone number on them, just anything to find a place to live. It took 3 months, contacted 150 people, email, text, social media, paying fees to apply for houses and then not hearing back from the landlords. And in the past 5 years, my rent has doubled. It's not sustainable. I work a perfectly fine job, and I can't find a decent place. A lot of the housing up here, in addition to not being affordable anymore, we have an issue with sick housing. A lot of the houses up here, they're very old. They're full of mold. Their electrical and plumbing aren't up to date. There's more problems than just, the amount of housing. And replacing this hospital site with, some new affordable housing that actually benefits the members of this community instead of, wealthy investors or tourists or retirees who aren't, going to be working full-time in the industries that support here. It's detrimental to the growth of the city. It's detrimental to the community. It's detrimental to the economy of the city. It really only helps a select few people.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Jana Fox. I live at 625 Liberty Street in Gwynn. I'm here on behalf of Marquette County Habitat for Humanity. I'm the repair program manager. Our Habitat is in our 30th year, and tomorrow we break ground on our 109th home. Habitat has always been about affordable housing. We service the entire county, and we're in our 109th house, but we have not built in Marquette in a long time. We cannot even get land in Marquette. Affordable housing is an issue that we deal with day in and day out. And the stories that I hear from potential homeowners, from the people I'm helping with repair program, down to people calling because they don't know where else to turn to, is devastating. It is so much a problem for this community. In Marquette in particular, I work all across the county, and other parts of the county are dealing with affordability, but they're dealing with blight and they're dealing with other issues. But Marquette, where everyone wants to live, is really having some problems. And I feel like the commission could definitely step up and make some real strides in that. I was alarmed to hear and not see anything in the Viridia plan that specifically called out a certain amount for affordable housing. They're talking about attainable housing, but what about affordable housing? That's 30 to 60% area median income. That's a single mom that we're breaking ground for. She's a retail manager. That's a mom who's a bank manager. I mean, these are our people in our community that we really need to be working with and for. And I'm following up on the last gentleman because he talked about sick housing. And so my job at Habitat is to visit people and help them with critical repairs. And those folks are low income, lots of them seniors, stuck in homes that they cannot afford that they cannot keep it repaired anymore, but they have no options. I can't tell them there's plenty of subsidized housing for seniors, there's handicap accessible. I have very limited resources to give these folks. So I turn away from 80-year-old women who can't stay in their home anymore, but they have nowhere else to go. And so I'm speaking for those folks, for my generation, where almost every single one of my friends on Facebook right now are scrambling because they are literally looking at homelessness in a month. I speak for my 8-year-old daughter, who I hope to God can stay in Marquette when she grows up, but I don't know if that's going to be possible. When she learned of my job, which I took over a year ago, and what I do for a living, she was so proud of me. She tells me, "Mama, you've always taught me to help people who are struggling. And I'm very proud of you for doing that." And I am begging the commission and our community to listen to those who are struggling, because there are more who are struggling who are not. We need to be taking care of the majority of those who are struggling. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Teresa Walter. I live at 419 West Bluff Street, and I am here to continue the expression of concern over affordable housing in Marquette and continue the reading of letters of concerned citizens. I was a renter starting in my college years as an NMU student. I rented for 10 years and noticed the prices continuing to go up as opportunities and overall wages stagnated. My husband and I have lived with roommates the entire time in order to afford rent in Marquette. Even as I progressed in my career and was making better wages, we were unable to live without roommates as the rental prices continued to climb. We saw the direction the winds were blowing and sought out a home in Marquette to begin to build a life as young professionals who wanted to live in the city that we work in, a city my family lives in, and a city that we love. We were unable to find a house in our price range, which was around $150K, and willing to stretch a little higher if need be. We were outbid every time by tens of thousands of dollars. Several buyers even waived inspection. Our offers were decent and more than appropriate for the houses we were looking at, which were small and badly taken care of. We were willing to make these concessions if it meant staying in town, but we simply weren't able to do so. We ended up buying a starter home with 4 bedrooms in Ishpeming for our price range. While we do love the West End and can see all the wonderful things happening in our new community, it is a bittersweet feeling, especially since I personally know more than 5 people in Marquette who are renters having no real rights or housing security, and their only homes are being sold out from under them. They all work in the city, are all on the verge of homelessness, no matter how hard they try to find any housing. They're looking outside the city as well, but they are not having any luck. Someone I know had a conversation with an NMU student's parent who came to collect their belongings and move them back downstate and unenroll her at NMU because she could not find a place to live. Enrollment is down, and despite the university's push to make larger dorms for student housing, most students do not want to live that way. What I believe is that people should be able to live in the city in which they work, especially when many jobs that need filling are food and entertainment service jobs that higher income homeowners in Marquette are not working and are complaining about lazy people not wanting to work anymore. In reality, many people are being priced out of the area, aren't being paid enough to waste their gas money to work a job that won't pay their bills, or aren't even able to own or drive a car because their income while attempting to navigate the abysmal schedule the public transit system runs. Work on a Sunday and don't have a car? Sorry, buses closed that day. People of all incomes deserve to live in Marquette, not just the privileged few, while the help commutes in from out of town.
Excuse me, that's it. That's your time. Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
I'm Rob Taylor, 526 Bank Street, Ishpeming. I came down here today as a former resident of Marquette who lived here for almost a decade to talk about the issues of affordable housing and the MGH project. My partner and I both came here to go to NMU like a lot of people have my age. After school, we decided to stay in the area. Thought we would make our living here, start our family here. You know, this town that we loved, we put so much time into, so much effort. When we started looking for housing, we couldn't find anything within our price range. We both work full-time jobs. I work a union job. Just nothing. We eventually ended up having to look out of the area, moved to Ishpeming, which was the only place we could find a house that we could afford, and not only afford, but actually be involved in the community there. One of the things Ishpeming's doing really well is they're seeing the issues that Marquette has, and they're going, we don't want to do that. And they're actually looking at these young families going, I've had a dozen friends move to Ishpeming because they cannot live in Marquette anymore. They cannot afford it. I have several friends who are about to be homeless tomorrow because they cannot find a place to live. And as great of a community as Marquette is, that's just absolutely silly that we reached this point. Now, I want to, every single one of you, I want you to think about this. Think about where you would be if you were, you know, tomorrow your lease was up and you had not found a place to rent. What would you do right now? Live in your car? Have a friend that could possibly let you crash on their couch? Not everyone's so lucky to be able to have any of those things. A lot of people don't have cars in town. I lived in town for 5 years without a vehicle. Didn't need one because I lived in town. Had to buy one because I moved to Ishpeming. Now I'm, you know, luckily I got a job in Ishpeming now, but I was driving back and forth. If it was about $5 a gallon at the time, I wouldn't have been able to afford my job. So, if you want to keep people in this community doing good work and building this community for the places that are like the place that those of us that moved here love so much, you need to make housing that they can afford so they can stay in this community. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
Nicholas Overmeyer, 1523 Division Street. I'll be reading one of the community responses tonight. I own a duplex in Marquette. I've lived in half and rented out the other half for 3 years. I would not be able to afford rent/live here if I wasn't able to supplement my income by taking on this responsibility in addition to my career. In the years I've owned property, my expenses have increased, whether it's heating, taxes, or price changes. I have not passed these on to my tenants, though I know others who have. I was fortunate enough to be able to purchase my home at a time when I was still able to afford it, though I had been passed up on multiple offers as I was outbid, in cash, by out-of-town buyers. Had my home gone on the market today, I would not have been able to afford it. Conversely, had I not purchased my home when I did, I would not be able to afford the rents that I see others charging. My point is this. Though I am fortunate, I recognize that my situation was a matter of timing which is no longer afforded to bother buyers and renters in our area. I don't understand how a young renter or buyer, much less a college student working for minimum wage, is expected to pay upwards of $600 a month, if not more, for a place to stay, while we see more and more expensive properties either built new or sold to out-of-town buyers. I do not buy the trickle-down that as higher-end properties are sold, they will then open up inventory on the less expensive end. The people buying the higher and lower-end properties at inflated prices are far fewer than those who are looking to purchase or rent a reasonably sized price property. This creates an obvious disparity in supply and demand. I won't get into my personal opinions on the monetization of our lakeshore with eyesore condos and hotels, as that is another argument entirely. Suffice it to say that I have not seen a reasonable effort to encourage affordable and sustainable housing for young talent to be built in our area. Rather, I have only seen evidence that we are catering to short-sighted, money-focused projects while ignoring the voices of the majority of Marquette's tax-paying constituents who are seeking to build families, start businesses, and reside full-time in our area.
Anyone else for public comment?
Geraldine Nault, 1851 North Mcclellan Avenue. I sympathize with those people unable to find a affordable home in Marquette. However, I do like a lot of the ideas that Viridia has put forth for the old hospital property, and I realize these are just circles on a chart right now. There's nothing concrete in that. Their ideas do address many of the concerns for housing in Marquette. maybe not the affordability issue itself, but you have to realize that the affordability issue is not a Marquette, Michigan only issue. It's a national issue. Goes from getting supplies to a builder being able to put up a home of good quality and sell it. They are in a business and they do deserve to make some money on it. But what person, anybody, is going to build a home and sell it for less than they built it for? I don't see that happening here or anywhere else. I trust the city commission and the city finance department can evaluate and decide monetarily whether this is a good idea for Marquette or not. And I thank you for all the work you put in deciding those issues, because the financing is a big issue. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Hi there. I'm Cheryl Feldman, 1630 Center Street, Marquette. I appreciate everything these young people have said, and they're not wrong. The flip side to this is that you don't go into business to lose money. You go into business to make money. That doesn't mean you have to be a whore about it and raise these prices that even old-timers like myself might find it difficult. Like when I look at one Marquette place that's astronomical and out of price range for many people, and unnecessarily so. The other issue is, I have no idea what the other issue is because it totally escaped me. But Marquette is a blighted city. All you have to do is walk down any street and you are going to see empty stores. Well, we have a construction class at the university. Let's utilize them. Let's get those stores out of its emptiness and let's construct some apartments there and then charge some reasonable rates. One young person said, and I say young because I'm older than all of you, one young person said something about why in Marquette should the cost of living with 20,000 people here be the same as a city that has 200,000. Well, it shouldn't, but this is an issue that's going around all over the country. So I think we got to get creative. Let's use people who are in construction. They can work with an established construction company, learn the ropes further, and we can get rid of some of this blight that's out there and not wait umpteen years for this to happen. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Anyone else? Just a reminder for the public, our chance to respond is at the very end of the meeting, so that's why we're not responding at this point in time. We'll get through the rest of our agenda and then we will have a chance to do so. Okay, so if there's no further public comment is now closed. We have 5 public hearings this evening. Up first, we have number 3 on the agenda, which is the public hearing for the formal hospital redevelopment Brownfield plan. This will require a roll call vote. City Clerk, could we please have the background?
Thank you, Mayor. A brownfield plan is being proposed for the redevelopment of the former hospital located at 420 West Magnetic Street. The Northern Michigan University Foundation is leading a consortium of public and private partners to facilitate the redevelopment. The proposed project would remove the buildings on the property to provide for an effective reconfiguration and redevelopment. The NMU Foundation will acquire the property from DLP Marquette General Hospital LLC and is serving as an equity investor and facilitator to secure a master developer for the site. The approach is proposed to focus on housing of all product types and price points, including affordable housing, as well as commercial uses that will enhance and support the community. The specific components of the development will be based on an agreement between the foundation and a master developer. The estimated investment is $166 million. This project is also expected to receive $5 million from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation in the form of Community Development Block Grant funds. The size and scale of the buildings on the property that will need to be removed represents a significant cost and barrier to redevelopment. The project will not be able to proceed with the burden of almost $20 million of demolition and asbestos abatement without brownfield tax increment financing support.
In addition, the redevelopment is anticipated to require infrastructure improvements, including the proposed reconstruction of College Avenue and associated infrastructure. The total brownfield TIF capture is estimated at $44.6 million, with an estimated capture period of 15 to 17 years. These costs are also brownfield eligible activities and may be reimbursed. At the end of the capture period, it is estimated that the property will be producing $4.4 million per year in tax revenue. A public hearing must be held by the City Commission for the approval of the Brownfield Plan. Approval of the Brownfield Plan will provide for the reimbursement of brownfield environmental and non-environmental eligible activity costs, including environmental due diligence and environmental response activities, lead and asbestos abatement, demolition, site preparation, infrastructure, including the reconstruction of College Avenue and other public improvements, and interest through the capture of future increased taxes generated by additional private investment. The Brownfield Plan was presented to the City of Marquette Brownfield Redevelopment Authority at their May 19, 2022 meeting and subsequently approved. Notices were then sent to the taxing jurisdictions in compliance with the requirements of Act 381. The public hearing was scheduled at a special meeting of the City Commission held on May 16, 2022. Fiscal effect, none. Recommendation, approve the former hospital redevelopment Brownfield Plan and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the resolution. Alternatives, as determined by the commission.
Thank you. We will go ahead and have a public hearing now. Public hearing is now open. Members of the public wishing to address the commission on this topic have 3 minutes to do so. You can approach the center podium. Anyone for public hearing? Please state your name and physical address, please.
Okay. Hi, Jeff Gagnon, 437 West Magnetic Street, right in the heart of this development. I just wanted to make you guys aware, which you probably are, there are 5 of us. There's 1 on Hebert Court and 4 of us on Magnetic Street that are directly across the street from all of these buildings that will be coming down. So I just wanted to put that out there, and also was hoping that the developer, whether it's this one or someone else, would have some sort of like a communication number that we could call, because we're right there, literally right there, not a block away. Not everybody else is peripheral. There are 5 of us directly across. So I just wanted to make that known, that there are people that live there. And I own my own home, so I'm not sure about the other 4 houses. I think they're owned, not rented, but it'd be nice. I'm not against the project. I know there's going to be noise and trucks and all of that stuff, but we just still have to live there for the next 5 to 8 years. So thank you.
Anyone else for the public hearing on this topic?
Thank you. My name is, excuse me, sorry. My name is Patrick Markey. I live at 419 West College, so I'm just 2 houses down from the blood bank. I'm not opposed to the redevelopment. My concerns with the City Commission are, I attended the informational meeting at NMU, and I asked about zoning. They said, oh, there wouldn't be any zoning changes, but that's not actually correct. Page 5, the last bullet point in the RFQ states that you guys have been talking about rezoning that area. So incorrect information given to the community that the commission's working on. The other concern is March 14th, the date was set that they're searching for that RFQ. April 8th, that's 26 days in the middle of the winter in the UP for a developer to come up here, evaluate a property, and put together a plan. Sounds like a little bit of a, we don't want real people, outsiders bidding on it or looking at it. And I say that because I'm also a builder who also spent time bidding commercial construction. And whenever we got those short windows, that's kind of what the advertisement was. I'd definitely love to see the hospital come down. I got no problem with Viridia doing it if they can. My concern is the relationship between the City Commission, the Viridia Group, and some of the other things that have happened behind closed doors or without really listening to the concerns of the members of this community. I agree, housing is not affordable. I also own a lot that I was able to acquire from the hospital with the intention of building affordable housing. Labor, material costs got out of control, never built on it. Someday I hope to provide a house for a young professional family, but it's just not doable at this point in time. Again, really my concern is just that the City Commission really and truly evaluates what is being presented by the Verde Group or other developers, and that they're not just going to take their word for it. I did not attend the last meeting, but from what I understood, someone from the City Commission came out and said we would not have been able to make this happen if it weren't for Verde Group. That really sounds like a little bit of back dealings, and you're going to do whatever they suggest. And I can't wait for College Street to be repaved. But at the same time, I'm concerned that are we doing proper studies on traffic flows for this? Because if you repave College Street as wide as it is, it's just going to be an expressway from the high school right on down. And you can put as many 25-mile-an-hour speed limit warning signs, people fly down that street as it is anyways. So all those factors need to be taken into consideration as well. We don't need another 3rd Street business corridor up
Excuse me,
College
that's 3
Avenue.
minutes. Thank you. Anyone else?
John Taylor, 2050 Presque Isle, number 26. As the committee reviews Viridia's plan, I will say this. I believe Viridia has done some very great things for our community. I enjoy visually their developments, and I believe they are of high quality. I would encourage that the development plan of this site could solve both of the issues that we brought up tonight. That before approving Viridia's plan, if the council could obtain from them a memorandum of understanding that if they are to build residential units there, a certain number would have to be either MISHDA approved, which allows people with subsidized housing to reside there, or be income-based. That might in and of itself be the most elegant solution to several problems. I live within about a mile of this development, and I look forward to seeing it. I share the concerns of the residents across the street, and I feel for what they'll have to put up with during the redevelopment. And I also can't wait to see College Avenue repaved. I used to tell people if you apply mascara on the bus coming down there, you're braver than I thought. But I would encourage us to think of solutions that encompass every issue that we're facing with this. And I believe Viridia would be amiable to this. But I would encourage the council in this case to perhaps flex a little authority to not hand over a wish list to a developer without getting what the city needs in return. And I look forward to seeing what's built on this site. I look even more forward to seeing friends who are in need right now reside there. People do need quality housing as well. Frankly, the apartment I live in is only held together by the mold, and I'm allergic to mold. If I'm a little sore-throated tonight, the last couple days have not been good for that. And here's 2 elegant solutions with our development partners, but I would ask you please ask them to truly give to the community what their promise is and what they're capable of building. Viridia has made some of the most iconic and magnificent structures in this city and also some of the most tax profitable. I believe that can continue and that their efforts can serve all of us equally well and bring about a mutually desirable outcome, but only if this commission is willing to hold them to that, which I would hope you would use your authority to do so. Thank you.
Anyone else for the public hearing?
Since we have a chance to speak again, I'd like to continue with the community responses. As I had said my name already, I'm Tony. Anywho, number 15, I work with low-income individuals attempting with finding them resources like food, housing, job applications, etc. Or I should say I attempt assisting them with housing. Finding a house or a room to rent is literally impossible for low-income folks in the city of Marquette, and almost everyone is now low income. I'm disgusted by it on a daily basis. I am sick of Marquette. I am disappointed in Marquette. I wish this place wasn't being destroyed by greed. Number 19, I am discouraged about this whole situation, as I believe the commission will not opt to act on these concerns. Even those who have campaigned for their positions based on this issue have repeatedly refused to address it. Truthfully, I'm pretty sure we're wasting our time with this. The next one reads, I live in Marquette and own my own hobby business. During the day, I work for another small business. Over the years of living in Marquette, 2021 to 2022, have been the hardest years to survive. Fuel is 10 to 20% higher in Marquette than southern cities. Apartments have skyrocketed in the last year. We've been with our current company for 3 years, started at a reasonable rate, and with a 10 to 15% increase from year to year. The lease I'm getting ready to sign is 40% higher than previous years. And actually, that's a really good point. Something that we've all seen, us young professionals and also folks, senior citizens living on fixed income, we have seen massive jumps in our rent, even though no changes have been made to any of the buildings. It's simply cited market value. I know folks who have lost their homes and businesses in the same fell swoop, folks who have been forced to deal with leaking from the ceiling and still sign on for about $150 more. Folks with pets who have had that used against them, hold them hostage. If you want to live here and not have to go out, be thrown to the wolves, pay us $300 more. It's a new pet fee we've decided. We can do that. We can change your lease as long as we give you 30 days notice. There's not much...
Mr. Boyle, is this related to the formal hospital redevelopment Brownfield plan specifically?
Yes, it is.
I'm not sure that it is.
See, that's the issue here, is that it is a complex situation, and even though... Yeah, you know what? Broke my flow. Thank you.
Anyone else for the public hearing on the former hospital redevelopment Brownfield plan?
I just want to point out that every single
Name
one...
and address, please.
Ryan Lebinsky, 712
you.
Norwood Street. I just want to point out that every single word in this document is related to this development directly, because every single person in this room, every single person in this city is impacted by this document. These are the words of the people that live in the city. These are the words of the people that you are supposed to represent. So all of you are supposed to represent the people that wrote these words. That's why it's relevant. Every word.
Anyone else for the public hearing? Anyone else? Seeing no further public hearing comments, the public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item number 3 under public hearings? Commissioner Stonehouse.
Your Honor, I motion to approve the former hospital redevelopment Brownfield plan and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the resolution.
Do we have a second on that motion? Commissioner Davis?
I will second the motion.
Commissioner Stonehouse, any discussion?
Well, I certainly, Your Honor, understand what's being said, but I also understand that we have had many hours of meetings regarding this plan, many hours of presentations, not only by the Viridia Group, but also by Northern Michigan University and the fund. I think we have done a good job of understanding the problem and understanding the tremendous potential that this will move the city, or move rather for the city, particularly as it relates to the problem of housing and providing a galaxy of different options for housing as we go forward. Thank you, Your Honor.
Commissioner Davis, discussion?
I agree with that. We've had a lot of discussion on this particular project, and just want to remind people that this particular brownfield plan is for the demolishing and the preparation of the site, not for the actual building of the buildings or the development. And I have a question for staff. The question came up about, will this need rezoning? And I just want to make sure we can clarify that.
I'm going to actually go ahead and pass that along to Community Development Director Dennis Stakowitz.
Yeah, as you mentioned, for the demolition of the property in the brownfield for this phase, there's no rezoning that needs to be done for that.
Might there be rezoning during the development phase?
If you get to the development phase, if the developer chooses to go with a planned unit development option, that could be a potential rezoning of the property. Otherwise, it's currently zoned as mixed use.
Okay. And then just a comment for Viridia, and the communication with the neighbors, I think, is very important, and I hope that that is considered as things move forward. Thank you.
Any other discussion from the commission? Commissioner Bodzell?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree that communication with Mr. Gagnon and other folks who live nearby is going to be critical as we move closer to the demolition. So I would also, I would echo Commissioner Davis's concerns about that. I just wanted to say that in my time on the City Commission, I don't think that we've had this many people come and talk about housing affordability at any single meeting before. And I think that it speaks to, you can hear in many of the stories that people have told. I wrote down a lot of quotes that really stood out. And I would appreciate it if folks who conducted this survey would be willing to share it with us, because I think it's really important that, I'm really interested in it. I think it's really important that everybody in the commission hears what people have to say, especially folks whose voices are too often not heard in our community. I am a renter. I'm a young person, obviously. I am a lifelong Marquette resident. I grew up here in a working class family. We often struggled with housing affordability in our community. We had to move several times when I was in middle school and high school to find housing that we could afford. My rent just went up this year. I think I'm now the only person on this commission who's a renter, actually. But and in the past, I've not only voted against brownfield plans that I felt didn't make sense, like plans for the townhomes at Founders Landing that were supposed to be middle-income housing, right? Or actually a recent development by Viridia Group, but we had a difference of opinion on that. But I've also advocated for affordable housing solutions, being the chair of the Ad Hoc Housing Committee. Later tonight, we're actually going to be voting on some pretty significant zoning reforms that I think over time will add a lot of, kind of incrementally add a lot of mid-range housing, rental housing to the community that we really need. And on this project, I've been pushing very hard for as many commitments on affordable housing and workforce housing as we can get. All that being said, I think that we really need to focus, as people who are concerned about housing affordability in our community, on what we are for, what we want to see happen, and I personally, and what solutions we want to this problem. I heard some really good ideas tonight. Some of them we should look into. Some of them, like short-term rental limitations, we've already implemented, actually. Others are unfortunately illegal in the state of Michigan. But I want to hear from all of you. I think that we all want to hear from all of you. And it's critically important that at this meeting tonight, you've all come here and made your voices heard. Many of you, most of you probably for the first time. Please keep doing that. Regardless of, whatever outcome we have tonight on this item, it's critically important, even on this specific project. If this brownfield plan is approved, we need to move forward and make sure we're holding Viridia Group accountable, that we're holding the NMU Foundation accountable, that you're holding all of us accountable to the commitments we've made in this very room in public regarding workforce housing, which will be part of this project. So all that to say, I will likely be voting in favor of this brownfield plan for the simple reason that I think that this project is actually part of the solution. The reality is that voting no on this brownfield plan would not do anything to address housing affordability concerns in the city. If we can even get, say, and this is just throwing out a random number, but if we could get even, say, 30 of these 300-ish housing units in this development to be in that more affordable workforce range, that is better than 0, which is what we will get if a majority of us vote no. That's and I am voting that way because I agree 110% with everything you've all said about how urgent this crisis is. So if we can get that small win, I'm going to take it. So I hope you all understand that. Even if you disagree, you can respect that. But I want this conversation to continue moving forward. So thank you all for being here, and please don't be a stranger in the future when we're talking about housing issues.
Any other commissioners discussion? Commissioner Hill.
Thank you. Appreciate the many people who have come here today, especially those folks who have come for the first time and spoken up for the first time. As Commissioner Bonsall said, that's a really important part of this process. We do hear you, as folks have heard me say before, by the time it gets to the City Commission, we're either blowing it up or we're saying yes. And sometimes we can amend things, but amending something with this many partners is the equivalent of stopping in its tracks. And for many of the reasons that Commissioner Bonsall said, I'm also going to be voting yes, because this is going to get us there, but it's going to take 5 years. And what I hear is there are people going to be homeless tomorrow. And I'll say that again, there are people who are going to be homeless in our community tomorrow. And I, frankly, when COVID hit, this was, I had my greatest concerns were, how is this going to play out? And I feel like we're here now, May 31st, 2022 from March 2020. And we need to work together, those of us who have stable housing, to come together and work on this problem and work as hard as we can, as fast as we can, with the incredible complicated set of issues when, the builders are telling us that it's $300 a square foot to build a home. And so I think growth is going to look different in the future, and also that Marquette is been discovered, and so there are many, 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 many more people competing for the housing than there'd ever been before. And we have to come to grips with that somehow. I don't say that I have the answers, but continuing the conversation. And I weigh very heavily on me that we are not providing good solutions, but I believe that the builders in the community, the government, the state government, the federal government, the attention is there, and now it's a matter of how we're going to actually get it resolved. But it starts with your raising your voice, and I thank you very much. I think, it's 2 years to get the buildings down, minimum 4 or 5 years before we even have a building go up. But we are, that this in fact is action moving forward to bring us more housing.
Other commissioners for discussion? Commissioner Hanley.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out again, as Commissioner Davis did, that most likely I'll be voting for this, but that's because this is to demolish the property at this point. That is all we are voting on. We do not get a say. The developer hasn't even made a full plan yet. You will get a chance to talk to them about that, though. There will be meetings where they bring a development agreement in front of us. That's the point, to come and fight for what they put into that. That's the point when we need your voices back here, pushing them to do exactly what you need for that. Those voices will make a difference then. This one, without this step, nothing will go forward. And I know that a lot of people think that if the county takes it or if we take it, there's a step that we could do. As much as we would love that, we're not developers. We don't build. We can try to facilitate building, but we cannot do it ourselves. And it is one of those things that I like to point out. I would also like to point out, Patrick, I forgot your last name. I didn't get a chance to write it down, but I did. It was me that said that without Viridia, we would have nothing. And in this point, it's true. And I said it because we had no other options that came to the table for an RFQ. This is them pushing forward with a risky project for them at a risky time to build. And we, as a city commission, had absolutely nothing to do with the decision for who got picked for this. We didn't get a vote on it. We didn't get a say in it. We didn't know who was picked until everyone else found out. So I want to make that very clear that it wasn't our choice. We had a group or a small portion of us that was part of it and got to express what we felt as a commission that we wanted to see. but they did not get a vote in who was picked. And of course, there was only one developer either way, but I want to make it clear that at no point did the city commission collude with anyone to do anything behind the scenes. And I want to make it very clear because that is not what we were here for. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Pretend Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be quick because most of my colleagues here have said very similar things that I wanted to say, but I just want to add to this that, you know, I understand the thought process of it was a short window, it was intentional, it was to not let other developers in. But let's also look at this another way. Any major developer looking at this is going to obviously research the community, and they're going to look at all of these things going on in the community. And when they see a local developer that is more than capable of doing this project, I mean, that's their market competition right there. And the thing is, if we vote no now, not only are we preventing any of this from happening, but if I was someone from a different state and the local developer in that city was told no, on top of the MEDC offering us $5 million for the project, plus our university's foundation, their involvement in this to make this also as feasible as possible and make it so the turnaround as far as when the city can actually get some tax revenue back from this significantly shorter because they're bringing the taxable value of the property to zero when they purchase it. No outside developer is going to look at all that and say, oh yeah, I think they'll approve my plan though. It's just not realistic. It took me 15 months constantly of putting in bids to finally get a house. And for the record, I have been homeless before. I understand. The problem is we can't do anything at this point on this project to do what you want. A lot of the ideas, I love it when people bring ideas instead of just, I don't want to say noise, but I'm a real solutions kind of person. But again, as Commissioner Bonzel said, a lot of the ideas that were brought forward, the state of Michigan doesn't allow municipalities to do that. We are slowly doing what we can over time to make changes, to address the issue, but a lot of the authority and power that we need to do so, we just don't have. I would like all of you that are super passionate about this to know this, though, that our state legislature right now is considering a legislation. And right now in Marquette, we have our Airbnb caps at 250. The legislation that's being considered right now in the state of Michigan would allow up to 30% of our housing stock to be turned into Airbnbs. So I want you to take all of that fire and passion you have right now and go contact the entire UP delegation for our state legislature, because that will have an immediate effect on us, all of us. In communities like Marquette or Munising, it will be unrecognizable if they can pass that. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you. All right. If there are no other comments from the commission, I do have several. I'm not usually very long-winded, so just know that this is an extraordinary circumstance. Usually I'm pretty succinct. I want to say it's very refreshing to see a lot of new faces here tonight. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your concerns and for being willing to read concerns of others you may or may not know personally, but whose stories resonate with you and with others in this room. I do want to say, because a lot of you are new faces, I just want to reiterate that we really are working on these issues. These are not the first times these issues have come up. We spend a lot of hours and days working on these issues. Do we have any fast and easy solutions? No. But we are open and willing to talk about any solutions you bring. That may not have an impact on the vote tonight because we are up against a deadline on that, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I hear you. I want to know more. I want to know how we can help. And I think we can. And honestly, in 2 agenda items, agenda item number 5, if you look at the detail of that, you could pull the whole hundreds of pages packet, we're going to make potentially some changes in 2 items that are going to help. And we're trying to get there. It's incremental. It is not easy in government to make quick, fast, easy changes. But housing, huge issue. We know. In January of 2020, we formed an ad hoc housing group, which Commissioner Bonzel chaired, that I had been asking for since I was on the commission in 2017. It took me over 2 years just to get a committee that I was allowed to appoint to start looking at the issue. And that was one of the first things I did when I was appointed mayor. So definitely, we hear you. Childcare didn't come up, but that is also a huge issue. Economic development, good paying jobs, also something we're continuing to work on. Climate change hasn't come up tonight other than when I mentioned it, but we're working on a lot of big, important things here. And, I just want you to know that the people who sit at this table, city staff, we're real people with families who live in this area. We've got a vested interest in ensuring that we can do the best we can for everyone. And that is not easy. And I just want you to think about that. I appreciate all the comments, but, there was a tinge of anger, and I get it. But, think about maybe how many meetings we've had to talk about it to get it here. Did any of you watch the previous special meeting, which was recorded on YouTube before you came, so you could educate yourself to know all, because I'm about to repeat everything I said at that last meeting, because I feel like people didn't know. So that's where I'm at. It's tough. I hear you, and I appreciate you rallying. I just also wanted to say that I am a parent of 2 young girls in this community, of a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, which is one of the main reasons I do this gig. I want to make sure that Marquette is viable for many years to come, financially sound, which we're working on, which also limits some of our choices right now because we've got to look at taxes here pretty quick, which is also not popular. Signing up for public service is not something that's easy, but I would challenge those of you who are passionate to sign up for a board. We've got, when you walked in, and it'll be probably at the end of the meeting too, we've got a list of vacancies, and some of them are, they meet once a quarter or once a month or twice a year, and it's a couple hours of your time on those time spans, and you can really help inform the decisions that eventually make it to our agendas. So I would really appreciate folks who look into that. Okay, so on to the actual formal hospital redevelopment brownfield plan. Some of the things I had said at the last meeting. This is a brownfield plan that will be between 16 and 19 years, about 44.6 million. I might have the figures a little off. Don't trust exactly what I'm saying verbatim. That's what happened at the last meeting, but our city clerk read it more accurately than I just stated it. This is a $166 million project, which is not city tax dollars. That is a private investment by Veridia. This will be a transformational project for that neighborhood. If we don't act tonight and vote in this plan, that building, I don't think will come down for 10, 20 years, if that ever. And I can't drive by that every day with my kids growing up in this community knowing that could be a neighborhood. As much as that may not solve the answer to the question that we keep asking, I can't have it be a blighted building. I don't want to put a fence up around it and have it be an eyesore for the rest of my kids' lives that they grew up here. I think it will become a vibrant neighborhood. It will meet some needs. I have faith that Veridia will work on trying to find some solutions. It may not be low income or affordable housing, but I'm hopeful that they will work with us. And as the market continues to change, maybe there will be an opportunity for them to have affordable, attainable housing. And I will continue to ask them to do that. I'll make that promise to you here and now. I talk to them frequently, and I will make sure that your voices are heard. Our job as commissioners is to represent the wishes and needs of all residents, and most people I talk to want to see this property redeveloped. This is one of the things I'm asked most at the grocery store, at gymnastics class, in Econo Foods, at the gas station, down at Matson Park. When's that building coming down and what's going to go there? People don't want a blighted building there. I think that this will be a new era for that area of Marquette. It's right next to 3rd Street. It's right next to the university. It's in the heart of our city. And I think we have a time and place to address the other concerns that have come up tonight. But I do believe that the city commission, city staff, we had a committee of 3 of us, Pro Tem Mayor, myself, and Commissioner Davis, that did a lot of meeting with ahead of time to express our concerns and our desires. We've done our due diligence, and I feel that this is a good project, and I'm excited about it. Anything else from the commission before we go ahead and take a roll call vote? Commissioner Bonzel?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to add two last things. I know it's been mentioned that this property, I've heard a couple people mention this property might potentially go to the county land bank. As a former employee of Marquette County who worked on several projects with the Marquette County Land Bank, I'm not sure exactly what the thought process is there, but generally the county land bank acquires properties through tax foreclosure. And I think it's very unlikely, given the fact that Duke Life Point owes relatively little in property taxes on this site as it is, and could probably lower their tax liabilities significantly if they wanted to. I think it's very unlikely that the county land bank will ever acquire the property. But even if they did, to give you an example of an affordable housing project that I worked on when I was an employee of Marquette County, the Marquette County Land Bank is doing this initiative to build modular homes in that kind of workforce housing range, that 80 to 120% area median income, kind of lower middle income range. And they're doing good work, but they're building like 5 houses over the course of like 2 or 3 years. So like that's their organizational capacity. That's the amount of money they have. And I think that brings me to a second point. We had someone from Habitat for Humanity today say they can't get land in the city. That's why they're not building affordable, like low-income housing in the city. And I think this discussion tonight and everything that we've heard tonight underscores that in addition to the zoning reforms and things we're doing tonight and whatever workforce housing ends up being part of this project, I want to reiterate something I said at a previous meeting, which is that I think we really need to look into the Housing Committee's recommendations that the city identify surplus city-owned property we have, that we control, that we get to decide what happens with it, and actually put out requests for qualifications specifically for affordable and workforce housing development for those properties. Oftentimes the problem, as in the case of this project, is not a lack of will, it's a lack of control. We don't own this property. The city doesn't have the money to redevelop this. $166 million is like 8 or 9 times the annual city budget. So what can we control? One of those things is the property that we own right now that's developable. So I hope that we can have conversations about that in the near future.
Commissioner Bonzel, I would just like to echo or I guess tag along. I do believe we have a work session coming up that addresses that very topic in early to mid-June.
Yes. We are looking at conducting that special meeting.
A special meeting. Okay. So that information will be forthcoming, but I think it's on city surplus property.
Correct.
We will be addressing that coming up very shortly. Commissioner Hill?
I just wanted to follow on to what Mayor Pro Tem Mayor said. When you contact your legislature, because you're all going to contact your legislatures about short-term rentals, the number is House Bill 4722. 4722. Everybody write that down. They're going to ask you what bill you're referring to. It's for House Bill 4722 is the one that would take away our ability to manage short-term rentals. The immediacy of the immediate housing crunch that we're having right now is so profound, and people don't know where they're going to live, and that fundamental sense of security that's being lost in our community. Thank you for articulating that. That's really hard, and I know there are people who are trying to help in different capacities in different organizations, and maybe those folks could give us a presentation at some point in the future here in part of the commission meeting as a way to share that information. I don't know, but it sounds like there's a real need for us to understand how do people get help with housing when they're on the verge of losing their home. Maybe that's something that we can help promote from the city commission level.
Any other discussion before we take a roll call vote? All right, City Clerk, would you mind conducting that for us, please?
Commissioner Bonzel?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Stonehouse?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mayor?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Up next, we have another public hearing on the Upco Limited Franchise Ordinance. This will also require a roll call vote. City Clerk, could we have the background, please?
Thank you, Mayor. In September 2019, staff discovered that the Upper Peninsula Power Company, Upco, was supplying retail electric utility service to Marquette Range Coal Services Company, Cleveland Cliffs, near the site of the former Presque Isle power plant without a public utility franchise. Pursuant to Article 7, Section 29 of the Michigan Constitution of 1963 and the Marquette City Charter, utility providers cannot provide public utility services within the city unless they have a franchise to do so. In November 2019, Upco asked the city to grant Upco a limited franchise to allow it to continue providing electric utility services to Marquette Range Coal Services Company. At that time, Upco provided the attached ordinance for a limited franchise with the following basic items. The non-exclusive franchise would allow Upco to provide electric utility services solely to Marquette Range Coal Services Company. The franchise would become effective 30 days after adoption and continue for 30 years, and the franchise could be revoked by either party upon 60 days written notice to the other. In order to fully consider the request, in December 2019, the city attorney notified Upco that the request would be taken under advisement. It is appropriate for the City Commission to consider the request at this time. Per city charter, public utility franchise may only be granted by ordinance, and an ordinance may not be enacted at the meeting at which it is introduced. A franchise ordinance which is subject to revocation by the City Commission may not be enacted by the City Commission unless a copy of the franchise ordinance has been available in the City Clerk's office for public inspection for at least 4 weeks after publication of a notice that such ordinance is on file. Notice of the availability of the franchise ordinance for inspection at the City Clerk's office was published on April 12, 2022. This public hearing was scheduled at the May 9th, 2022 City Commission meeting. There are two primary options available for considering this request. Approve the attached ordinance for a limited franchise with Upco to provide electric services to Marquette Range Coal Services Company within the city of Marquette as requested, or reject the attached ordinance for a limited franchise for Upco to provide electric services to Marquette Range Coal Services Company within the city of Marquette, and authorize the city manager to provide 60 days written notice to Upco to remove its personal property from city real property. Fiscal effect, none by this action. Recommendation, following the public hearing, consider the ordinance for a limited franchise for Upco to provide electric service to Marquette Range Coal Services Company within the city of Marquette and take action regarding the request. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you, City Clerk. Members of the public wishing to make a comment on this public hearing will have 3 minutes to do so. Public hearing is now open. If you have a public hearing comment for the Upco Limited Franchise Ordinance, go ahead and approach center podium. Name and physical address, please.
Good evening. I'm Lindsay McWebb, representing Upco. I live at 10114 County Road 510. First, thank you for reviewing the limited franchise request this evening for Upco to continue to serve Marquette Range Coal Services. I wanted to take a couple minutes to provide further background information. Marquette Range Coal Services Company, which is a subsidiary of Cliffs Natural Resources, owns and operates a material handling facility at the ore dock that is located in Marquette's Upper Harbor. This material handling system is used to offload coal and limestone from freighters that transport these materials to Marquette. Historically, the coal was used to fuel the Presque Isle power plant and the city's Shiras generation station. And the limestone is used by Cliffs to produce iron ore pellets. Upco has served Marquette Range Coal Service Company for more than 68 years out of the Presque Isle power plant substation. Between June 1st, 1954 and June 1st, 1984, Upco served Marquette Range Coal Service Company under a limited franchise ordinance 178, which I have supplied the clerk to pass out for you for reference. Ordinance 178 expired on June 1st, 1984 at the end of the franchise's 30-year term. On November 8, 2019, Upco requested a limited franchise from the city in response to an inquiry it received from the city's attorney. That request is the subject of tonight's public hearing. I would like to emphasize the limited franchise being requested by Upco would only affect Marquette Range Coal Service Company. Simply put, Upco's request, if approved, would maintain the status quo. No additional customers within the city of Marquette would be affected by this limited franchise, and Upco is not requesting the right or opportunity to serve any additional customers within the city of Marquette. Lastly, Upco's corporate office is located within the city of Marquette at 1002 Harbor Hills Drive. Upco and its employees contribute significantly to the betterment of the community. Thank you very much.
Anyone else for the public hearing? Anyone else? Seeing no additional comments for the public hearing, this public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item, number 4? Pro Tem Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to reject the attached ordinance for limited franchise for Upco to provide electric services to the Marquette Range Coal Services Company within the city of Marquette and authorize the city manager to provide a 60-day notice, written notice to Upco to remove its personal property from city real property.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Hanley?
I second that motion.
Pro Tem Mayor, any discussion?
I would only add that they've been operating without a franchise agreement for 38 years, and we have a fantastic public utility provider.
Commissioner Hanley, anything to add?
I second that.
Okay. Other commissioners, anything to add? Commissioner Stonehouse?
I will vote against the recommendation or the motion.
You will vote against the rejection.
Against the rejection.
Okay.
No. I'm lost here.
His motion was to reject.
Sorry?
His motion was to
I
reject.
will vote against the motion to reject as made. My rationale being that the company has done what they've said they've done for a very long time. They do maintain corporate structure within the city of Marquette and are one of our, I guess I'll say, stellar long-term organizations for providing really good electric power to folks. And I see no great benefit to the city in rejecting the opportunity, not to keep them. That's my reasoning.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Bonzel?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would agree with the points and maybe expand on what Mayor Pro Tem Mayor said. My concern, I understand what Commissioner Stonehouse is saying, but my concern is that we are very fortunate in the city of Marquette to have a public electric utility. In our discussions, our work sessions with the Board of Light and Power, which is an elected board, right, that manages that public utility. I think there's been a lot of concern about some of the precedents that might be set by allowing Upco to continue operating in this manner. I share some of those concerns. I think that we need to err on the side of caution here and make sure that we are avoiding setting a dangerous precedent that could potentially undermine the public electric utility we're very fortunate to have, unlike most of the UP.
Any other discussion?
Only that I think there's great, obviously, validity in what Commissioner Bonzel says, but when we roll it back to the level of reality, it is a very small operation that's been ongoing for a very long time, that certainly by the agreement so stated has no expectation of expanding in any way, shape, or form. So it doesn't make any difference. And understanding that, yes, it may establish a precedent is well and good, but that those precedents begin and end right in this board. If we don't want it, we kill it. So it's not like it's already on a roll. Thank you for your time, Your Honor.
Any other discussion from the commission? Let's go ahead and take a roll call vote. City Clerk?
Commissioner Bonzel?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Stonehouse?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Mayor?
Yes.
And Mayor Smith?
Yes. Motion passes 6-1. Up next, we have a public hearing on the rezoning of city-owned properties adjacent to Mcclellan Avenue. This will require a roll call vote. Oh, one off. My apologies. Item 5, public hearing, land development code amendments, roll call vote. I got ahead of myself. Sorry, folks. Okay. City Clerk, could we have the background on the land development code, please?
Thank you, Mayor. On April 12, 2022, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing for the consideration of a comprehensive set of amendments to the Land Development Code that had been the subject of several months of work and refinement before this meeting. After considering the proposed amendments and conducting a public hearing, the Planning Commission approved the following motion. It was moved by S. Middlefelt, seconded by M. Dunn, and carried 8-0 that after review of the draft Land Development Code amendments presented as Case 01-ZOA-04-2022, and after conducting a public hearing and careful consideration of the contents of the draft LDC amendments, the Planning Commission finds that the draft LDC amendments are consistent with the recommendations, goals, and policy objectives of the Community Master Plan, comply with Section 54.1405 of the Land Development Code, and therefore are justified and appropriate, and therefore should be approved by the City Commission as presented. In the attached draft amendments, strike-throughs indicate repealed content, yellow highlights indicate newly added material, and turquoise highlights indicate staff notations. The City Commission scheduled this public hearing at the April 25th, 2022 regular meeting. Fiscal effect, none. Recommendation, following the public hearing, adopt ordinance number 709, Land Development Code amendments. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
Thank you, City Clerk. Members of the public wishing to make a comment on this public hearing, the Land Development Code amendments, may go ahead and approach the center podium. Public hearing is now open.
I promise that this time it will meet your standards of on topic. I'd just like to point out that this parcel that is being rezoned,
This is not a rezoning of a parcel. This is a land development code.
Right. But it is the Mcclellan property.
No, we're not on that one.
Oh.
Land development code.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I also have something to say on this one. Yeah, a lot of great work on that. I do have to say that, yes, there are some great incremental changes, but I definitely don't think this goes far enough. And I did attend the joint session at the Municipal Center during that. I did raise my concerns about the medium density residential zoning areas, not allowing duplexes, triplexes, and multifamily housing, even though we have many neighborhoods, such as mine in West Marquette, that are predominantly multifamily housing, but that is a dying breed. We have seen in the past 2 years so many houses be converted over to, short-term rentals, single-family homes, and that has reduced our housing by, it's taken it by half and half again. This is a good start, but we seriously need to do more. We seriously need to allow for the housing inventory that we have instead of penalizing it and forcing homeowners who have purchased those, especially since they are, for the most part, starter homes. It's not people getting rich off of these old places. There needs to be resources available at the city level so that we can make the changes that are required by you. So we can stay in compliance and provide affordable housing for the community. Thank you.
Anyone else for the public hearing on the Land Development Code amendments?
John Taylor, 2050 Presque Isle, number 26. As to the issue of rezoning land on Mcclellan,
This is not the right public hearing.
Which one is this again?
Land Development Code amendments.
Crap. That was the next one on the docket, right? Right. Well, reading them in the right order would be great. Thank you. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Hey, anyone else? Anyone else for the Land Development Code amendments public hearing? LDC. Still on the Land Development Code here. Anyone else? I'm not seeing anyone else for this one. Public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item? Commissioner Bonzel?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that we adopt ordinance number 709, Land Development Code Amendments.
And do we have a second? Commissioner Davis?
I will second the motion.
Commissioner Bonzel, any discussion?
I first just want to say, in response to the public comment that Mr. Boyle made, I agree. I think this is a first step. And it's important that, as we discussed at our meeting on April 28th, that we continue moving forward on certain things. We already talked tonight about city-owned properties, what could be done there. I know on the 28th, we also discussed legalizing duplexes throughout the city of Marquette as a possibility in the future. That was something that was recommended by the Ad Hoc Housing Committee and that the Planning Commission's looking at right now. So hopefully in the future, that can be something we can consider. But the amendments that we're voting on tonight make a lot of progress. So, and this is really all thanks to the hard work of the Planning Commission, and before that, the other the folks who were on the Ad Hoc Housing Committee who volunteered a bunch of their time to recommend many of the housing-related things in here. So we're legalizing accessory dwelling units, or like granny flats or garage-top apartments in all residential neighborhoods. Allowing multifamily housing in the central business district. I know somebody mentioned, hey, let's get some apartments in some of these empty commercial properties. That will now be easier. Allowing supportive housing as a special land use, streamlining the costly and lengthy site plan review process to make it easier to build new housing, adjusting excessive lot size and setback requirements in residential zones, because oftentimes even where duplexes or triplexes or smaller single family homes are allowed, they're impossible or very difficult to build because of lot setback requirements in our zoning code. We're making it easier to build barrier-free access ramps on residential properties, which is an issue for many lower-income senior citizens especially, and people with disabilities. None of this is a silver bullet solution, but it is a start. It's an important first step. And hopefully we're able to continue taking those steps moving forward.
Anyone else on the commission for discussion on this item? Did I not do the second? Commissioner Davis, you're up. I apologize.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonzel, for a nice little review of the changes. The Planning Commission and the staff took a lot of thought into what was done in the the Ad Hoc Housing Committee and other things that needed to be done. And none of it was done quickly or easily. A lot of thought and a lot of discussion went into it. And as Mayor Smith said, changing housing and making it more affordable comes in very small increments, and it's not easy. And this is really a good step forward. And I just want to acknowledge and thank the Planning Commission for all of their concern and discussions over what each of these changes means to the greater community, and actually very much thanking the staff that went behind all of the city or the Planning Commission work on these changes.
Any other commissioners' discussion on this item? Commissioner Hill?
I think the next step then is to help maybe all of us here in the room today help publicize that these changes have now taken place and that this is an opportunity for us to actually build. That we had to have a legal framework within which to add this types of housing, and this today, May 31st, 2022, we now have that legal framework. So let's make sure that everyone we know knows that, so that there may be folks who own homes or properties that are wondering what comes next, or there may be opportunities for now new private investment to happen, not at the $166 million scale, but maybe at the $50,000 scale, that would allow folks to then put that put that apartment on top of the garage and that kind of stuff. That we need to get that snowball rolling, right? And so we had a short survey there from Commissioner Bonsall of what's going to, there's a whole bunch of things that could happen. And maybe there's a way, again, communication, how we can help spread the word that these are now opportunities. Thank you.
Any other commissioners? I just wanted to thank the Planning Commission. I think I saw the chair somewhere in the audience here. Thank you, Chair Cardillo, and the whole Planning Commission for your work on this. Thank you to city staff for their endless hours on first getting it in place a couple years back, and now amending it to include some of the recommendations we had on our Ad Hoc Housing Committee report that was adopted by the City Commission, I believe, late last fall, or maybe early last winter. And I just wanted to thank Commissioner Bonzel for doing a good job summarizing what I was just about to do and the actual changes and how it will help solve the problem, however incrementally that may be. Obviously, a lot more work to come, but I think it is positive change. So I will absolutely be voting yes on this one. I think it's time for a roll call vote. City Clerk.
Commissioner Bonzal,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Commissioner Stonehouse,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mayor,
Yes.
and Mayor Smith.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Okay, now we're going to get on to this Mcclellan Avenue piece. Item number 6, public hearing, rezoning of city-owned properties adjacent to Mcclellan Avenue. This will require a roll call vote. This is another public hearing. City Clerk, could we have the background, please?
Thank you, Mayor. The subject properties are currently zoned municipal. The intent of the municipal district is to permit flexible development and approval standards for properties used by the city of Marquette. Following the proposal of an affordable housing project in November of 2021 and the resulting city commission discussion, as well as feedback from the surrounding neighborhood, the city commission authorized an application to rezone the property as conservation recreation. The intent of the conservation recreation district is to preserve the character of land in the city with outstanding scenic and/or recreational qualities by restricting development not suited to this goal, to prevent development of land which has great ecological value or where there are natural hazards to development, and to preserve open areas for forestry, agriculture, and recreation. Rezoning the land to conservation recreation would put it into the same category as most of the city-owned waterfront, including the recently acquired Wee Beach, Presque Isle Park, and most of the other recreational areas within the city. Rezoning the property to conservation recreation would not change the city's ownership of the property and would not commit the city to any specific uses of the property. It would, however, remove a large portion of property already served by utilities from city surplus land that is eligible for development for housing. On April 12, 2022, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing for the proposed rezoning of several city-owned properties in the Mcclellan Avenue corridor between Fair Avenue and Wright Street from a municipal zoning district to a conservation recreation zoning district. This rezoning will require a zoning map amendment. The properties are 1433 Wright Street, PIN number 0511880, 1435 Wright Street, number 0511840, 1621 Center Street, PIN number 0512390, 1505 West Fair, PIN number 0970041, 1398 West Avenue, which is PIN number 0970031, 1396 West Avenue, PIN number 0970021, 1600 West, PIN number 0512431, and McClellan Avenue, PIN number 0512453 and 0512454. After the presentation of the staff file review and analysis, applicant testimony, and a public hearing, the Planning Commission made the following motion. It was moved by M. Larson, seconded by M. Dunn, and carried 5-3, that after conducting a public hearing and review of the application and staff report for 01-REZ-04-22, the Planning Commission finds that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the Community Master Plan and meets the requirements of the Land Development Code, Section 54.1405, and hereby recommends that the City Commission approve 01-REZ-04-22 as presented. Yeses from W. Primo, M. Larson, N. Williams, M. Dunn, and N. Frischkorn, and no votes from A. Andres, S. Mittelfelt, and J. Cardillo. The City Commission scheduled this public hearing at the April 25th, 2022 regular meeting. Fiscal effect, none. Recommendation, following the public hearing, adopt Ordinance 710, rezoning several parcels of city-owned property located adjacent to McClellan Avenue from municipal to conservation recreation, as recommended by the Planning Commission, and direct the mayor and city clerk to sign the ordinance. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you, City Clerk. Members of the public wishing to make a comment on this public hearing, the rezoning of city-owned properties adjacent to McClellan Avenue, have 3 minutes to do so. Please state your name and physical address unless you've done so at this meeting already. Public hearing is now open.
Living about a mile from the proposed rezoning, I would encourage the commission not to rezone in any way that could forbid residential use of this property, as it is some of the rare city-owned property you do have control of that is near the university, near other medical amenities. I know when this was first discussed, I had seen some people comment on TV6's webpage of this discussion that, but you can't do that. There's a vibrant deer population in that patch. I'd like to remind the council there's also a very vibrant human population in that area, but unlike the deer, we can't sleep outside in December without dying. What use is made of this land, I have trust in the council to make for its best commercial development, but I would encourage you, do not zone it in such a way that residential development is totally out of the question. It would be working against what you're building toward to do so, in my opinion. And again, it would also, in many ways, reinvigorate my own neighborhood. Now, I may live about a mile down the road from there, but having more affordable housing near in my neighborhood would help more students stay near the university. It could open up business opportunities along Wright Street. It would definitely direct more traffic to any existing businesses there. If anyone in the National Guard wanted to live near the Armory, that would also open up housing opportunities there. And I would recommend the zoning of this parcel remain in such a state that it can be zoned for residential use. That's really all I have to say about this. I believe I've stated my position fairly clearly. Thank you.
Anyone else for this public hearing?
I'll get it right this time. So, I just want to say, you know, I do really appreciate the conservation of natural spaces. I hold this dialectic in my head as, you know, equally true. We need more wild spaces. We need more green spaces. We need more biodiversity, and we also need more affordable housing. So I would just like to bring it up and make sure it is stated on the public record that the City Commission did pass on affordable housing with Renovare when they brought up their plans for that area. That had specific guarantees for a percentage of housing with the specific guaranteed number of 175,000, I believe, for those units. That is much more attainable than other properties that were also approved around the same time. And that's a model we can look at. So, you know, the deer need a place to sleep too, but so do we. Thank you.
Hi, I'm still Cheryl Feldman. I'm still at 1630 Center Street. One of the reasons that Renovare project was turned down was because A, it was going to destroy property value in that area of houses that have been there for a while. The second one, there is so much traffic on Wright Street and on Mcclellan coming off of Wright Street that this is a place where accidents are just waiting to happen. This is not the place to put up, I don't know how many units it was, 96, 69 units, whatever it was. This is not the place to put it up. I have no objection to building affordable housing if the location is right. And this, I live right next to the wetland. It's like being in the Garden of Eden. And I know we see deer coming and going and rabbits and whatever else, but that's what we paid for. We paid for the privilege of living there. And nobody who lives farther down west wants to pull into their driveway, sit on their back porch, and watch headlights coming in. They didn't pay for that. They paid for the beauty of the land. You created, and I don't mean you personally, but other city commissions prior to yours, created green spaces. That's what the commissions lived and died by. Even Ms. Hill is sold on the green spaces. That's not a criticism, that's just a comment. Is sold on the green spaces. Well, you now have green spaces, but you have the opportunity now to rebuild the city, to take those storefronts that are empty and restructure them into housing. Do not destroy the beauty of the city just for housing. I'm sorry. When you told me that you were homeless, my heart broke for you at one point, that you were homeless. I felt very sad for you. I understand how all these young people feel, but you got to have the right location in order to do this, and this is just not the right location. Thank you.
Anyone else for this public hearing?
Karen Kimar Johnson, 1700 West Avenue, Marquette. And I just want to say that the Planning Commission, you direct them to examine this fully. They did, they spent the time, and they recommended to you to rezone this, and I would recommend that you consider their recommendation and keep this as a green space for our area. Thank you.
Anyone else for this public hearing?
Hi, I'm Ann Donahue, 1614 West Avenue, and I'd like to echo Karen's comments that the Planning Commission did advise you to rezone this to conservation recreation, and I understand that there's a real push and pull between green space and affordable housing, and my heart also breaks for anyone who's having trouble with housing, but it is also imperative to conserve green space as much as possible. Thank you.
Anyone else for this public hearing? Anyone else? Seeing no additional public hearing comments, this public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item? Commissioner Davis?
I move that we adopt Ordinance 710, rezoning several parcels of city-owned property located adjacent to Mcclellan Avenue from municipal to conservation recreation as recommended by the Planning Commission, and direct the mayor and city clerk to sign the ordinance.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Hill?
I'll second that motion.
Commissioner Davis, discussion?
Not a whole lot of discussion. This is one of those topics that filled the room. And we had a great deal of discussion about it. The commission made a recommendation to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission reviewed the issue and are once again recommending back to us that we rezone this, and I will support that.
Commissioner Hill?
I want to, talk about, use this as an opportunity. One of my fundamental concerns about how we're approaching this housing issue is that we're approaching it parcel by parcel by parcel by parcel. And I think I am so ready to have the conversation about how does Marquette grow as a community, and where do we see housing happening next? And now that we have so many people working from home, what does that mean for how we develop housing and how we develop commercial spaces, and what does mixed use mean when so many people are working from home? And that conversation is, I think, would smooth the conversation where we have a discussion on a parcel and we fill the room, and then it goes back to another group, and then it fills the room, and then let's talk about how the whole city is going to grow, and not just the whole city, but actually and then with the adjoining townships, this all of us here together. This area is very attractive to all of us, and how would we actually work together to have this conversation about growing? So I just want to put that out there. That is fundamentally what I really want us to get to. I've been driving for this master plan for years. The mayor is driving for housing, which is also very important. But I want to have this conversation, a comprehensive conversation about where we're growing and what does housing mean. And then I do also want to just clarify, my actual concern about this particular property is not so much the green space as it is the water. And where does the water go, and how do we accommodate water in that space appropriately, and manage the flow of that, as well as the traffic and understanding the traffic concerns. So, and I want to also, I know it was a very close vote with the Planning Commission. I want to recognize that. This has been a, one of those, again, that contentiousness around what do we do in this one place. Let's look at the whole community and figure that out. I hope we can get there soon. Thank you.
Commissioner Hanley?
First, I have a couple of questions for city staff regarding this. It's probably going to be Dennis that's going to have the answers. But when did the city acquire this property?
The city historically owned a good portion of it, and then there were some acquisitions that were done in around the late 90s, early 2000, and that's the best I can do off the top of my head.
Okay, and we did run utilities to these properties, correct?
When the Mcclellan extension was completed, there were utilities that were placed in the road, water, sanitary sewer, and also storm sewer. And there were laterals placed to the properties as well with the thoughts of future development.
And how much did that cost us? Ballpark. Obviously, you're not going to have a direct.
I don't want to, embellish, but I can remember to the tune of $300 and some thousand back when it was done.
Perfect. Thank you. And the reason I bring this up is I think that we would be irresponsible to the people in this room looking at affordable housing to take multiple properties off the city's surplus property list that we have put work into and put utilities to make into residential things just because we want more green space. And while I'm not opposed to green space, I do love it. I did not vote against the last project because of the green space. I voted because I did not think it was appropriate to call it a blighted property. It is not a blighted property, but that does not mean that I do not believe that it should not be developed into housing of some sort at some point if the right thing were to come along. So I will be voting against this recommendation because I do believe that these should stay on the rolls and we should have an option instead of taking away all options. I'm not saying we'll build on it tomorrow, but I'm saying if the right option were to come along, I would like to be able to move on it versus having it taken off forever. Thank you.
Commissioner Stonehouse?
Your Honor, I would only point out that, that the commission, when it did vote, I think it was a 7-0 vote, to take that property and essentially make it into a wilderness, if you will, or hold it and preserve it, the conservation easement, I think we put on that. And we did that because we really recognized that it was a conservation area. It had become, in fact, the park to the residents that lived there, and for their children and their children's children. And that commitment had been made by a mayor when that road had opened. Now, while the mayor's commitment holds water only for the time of his office, we understand that, but we also understand the moral side of that commitment made to those people that live there and raise their families there. So I will be very happy to vote for this resolution because I believe it fulfills that commitment that this commission made. Thank you, Your Honor.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Bonzo?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would only add that I definitely understand both sides of the argument here. I think that Mr. Boyle made a really good point when a couple other people kind of said the same thing, right? That there's this balance between we want people to be able to afford to live in Marquette. We also want people to be able to enjoy the things that drew them to Marquette. We want to preserve the things that make people want to live here in the first place. So there's always that tension. I think it's always going to be sort of a case-by-case decision based on the details. I think in this case, this property historically has always been used pretty much exclusively for conservation and recreation. I think there have been public statements made by city elected officials in the past that that's how it should continue to be used. The city's current community master plan, which was approved just in 2015, just a few years ago, said that that's how it should continue to be used. Also, any future redevelopment of the site would require rezoning anyway because it's currently zoned municipal, not for housing. I also think that it's important to recognize that the developer who proposed this project has kind of moved on. And hopefully maybe we can get them back in some other location. But I think the one thing I will say, and I'm going to vote in favor of rezoning it, but one thing I will say is I think this speaks to a need, as Commissioner Hill pointed out, and as we've kind of talked about tonight, to have a more holistic city-wide discussion. Look at all the city-owned properties. I think that if we had started with a more holistic process like that, with public input, with public discussions by the commission, trying to get feedback from people all over the community, I'm not sure that we would have decided to put out an RFQ or something for this property for affordable housing. I kind of doubt it, actually. But there are several other properties that maybe it would make more sense. So I think that rezoning this property makes sense. I would also note, although it was a split vote by the Planning Commission, in reading through the minutes of the Planning Commission, it seemed that most of the concerns, and I don't want to speak for anybody, but it seemed that most of the concerns from those who voted no were more process-based concerns about, does it make sense to rezone now when we're starting a new community master plan development? I think one or two people who voted no actually said that they are in favor of in concept of rezoning to conservation and recreation. So I think there's a lot of weight on that side of the argument personally. But moving forward, we need to have a more holistic and strategic citywide process when looking at affordable and workforce housing.
Any other commissioners? I've got a few comments. So for me, I will be voting yes on this project, or this rezoning, I should say. Some of the things that resonate with me are that the residents in this area were promised to not have development in that area. I understand that we also invested, so that's a conflict, but we had this room filled probably 3 times of what it is now with people when we went to when we had Renovare come and present to make that proposal. And we are, or at least we were, in communications with Renovare to see if there was another property in Marquette that they would be willing to look at. I don't know where that's at. Maybe we'll get an update soon. I will say in that specific area of town, there is no park nearby within walking distance that's safe for small kids. So that's something that it's, I'm trying to think of right, the actual reasons why I would want it to be conservation recreation. And those are some of them that come to mind for me. Another thing is in the land development code, the original land development code, when that came through, we had a big emphasis on maintaining the tree canopy cover in the city of Marquette. I understand we have conflicting needs, but that's something that if we just bulldoze and continue to build, I would rather find ways to build existing properties, kind of like the Vault project, which I know is controversial, but I'd rather resurface a parking lot and put something there than, take down a forest. So always looking at creative ways. I would also say that when Renovare came, this entire commission did vote down that project. It sounds like for a myriad of reasons, but it does seem like there is quite a bit of energy and support in the community on keeping that as a green space. So I'm not sure if folks here have been along the bike path along there. There are little trails. It's not an actual park. I mean, it's along the bike path, but with the conservation and recreation zoning, we could look at other things that are priorities on our list, like, and this is not a promise by any means, but maybe a small dog park. I'm not saying that's what goes there. It may not. But right with that zoning, we have some other options that may fill other needs that are dire needs in the community. So I think that it makes sense. I appreciate the Planning Commission putting in the work to make sure that it makes sense, by their standards, and I understand some of their concerns as well. But I will be voting yes on this. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. City Clerk?
Commissioner Bonzal?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanley?
No.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Stonehouse?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mayor?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Yes. Motion passes 6-1. Okay, last public hearing, not last item, but last public hearing. We have item 7, public hearing, single lot assessment rule number 589. This also will require a roll call vote. City Clerk, could we have the background, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Chapter 40, Section 40-21 of the City Code requires that when an improvement shall have been made by the city upon or in respect to any single premises, the expense of which is chargeable against such premises and the owner thereof under the provisions of this chapter, and is not of that class required to be prorated among several lots and parcels of land in a special assessment district.
Hold on, City Clerk, excuse me, there's no speaking during the commission meeting?
Tell that to the people that just walked out, they started.
Well, I'm speaking to everyone. Excuse me, please exit if you're speaking. We're trying to have a meeting here. Thank you. Sorry, City Clerk, please resume.
An account of the cost to be charged to the owner shall be reported to the city treasurer, who shall immediately bill the owner if known. The city code further requires that when the city treasurer determines that a number of properties have had outstanding bills for a sufficient time, the treasurer shall notify the city assessor, who shall prepare a single lot assessment roll and schedule a public hearing before the city commission on that roll. Impacted property owners have received notification of the time and place of the hearing in accordance with Section 40-21 of the City Code. The City Commission scheduled this public hearing at the May 9th, 2022 regular meeting. Fiscal effect. $1,411.13 plus accruing interest and penalties. Recommendation, confirm single lot special assessment roll number 589 and authorize the mayor to sign the warrant. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you, City Clerk. All right, so on this public hearing, single lot assessment roll number 589, public hearing is now open. 3 minutes to speak. Name and physical address unless you've already had a chance to talk at the meeting and we know who you are. Anyone else for this public hearing? The single lot assessment roll 589. Seeing no one, this public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item? Commissioner Hanley.
I motion that we confirm the single lot special assessment roll number 589 and authorize the mayor to sign the warrant.
And we have a second on that motion. Commissioner Hill?
I second that motion.
Commissioner Hanley, any discussion?
Nope.
Commissioner Hill?
I commend the city staff for the hard work they did to reduce the amount and strongly encourage folks to go ahead and get those payments in. Thank you.
Any other discussion from the commission? City Clerk, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Bonzal?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Stonehouse?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mayor?
Yes.
And Mayor Smith?
Yes. Commissioner Stonehouse, can I just confirm, was it a yes vote?
That was a yes vote.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0. All right, up next, we have the consent agenda. This also will require a roll call vote. Commissioners, do we have a motion on consent? Commissioner Bonzal?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
And do we have a second? Pro Tem Mayor?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
No.
All right, roll call vote, please. City Clerk?
Commissioner Bonzal?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Stonehouse?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mayor?
Yes.
And Mayor Smith?
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. 2 items on new business here. Number 9, Lake Superior Shoreline Restoration Project, conditional contractor selection. City Clerk, could we have the background, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Plans have been developed for the restoration of the Lake Superior shoreline adjacent to Lakeshore Boulevard between Hawley Street and Pine Street. This proposed project includes shoreline armoring and stabilization, habitat restoration, and the creation of enhanced public recreation areas. Baird Engineering was the consulting design engineer utilized for this project. The city publicly advertised a request for construction bids for this project, and 4 bidders responded. A bid opening occurred on May 5th, 2022, and results are summarized below. Smith Construction, Inc., $4,312,877.60. Payne and Dolan, Inc. of Milwaukee, $6,248,763.95. A. Lindbergh and Sons, $6,291,840.70. And Bacco Construction Company, $6,345,692.20. The engineer's estimate for this project was $7,360,000. The city is currently awaiting final permits from Eagle and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Per their contract documents, the city can conditionally select a contractor, and they will be required to honor their bid prices for 120 days after bid opening while the city awaits permit approvals. This time period can be mutually extended if the city does not receive permits during the 120-day time period. Final commission approval of a contractor will be required once final permits are received. Fiscal effect: sufficient funds are approved for this project in the fiscal year 2022 budget. No fiscal effect will result from this conditional contractor selection. Recommendation: conditionally select Smith Construction's proposal for this project with the intent to enter into a contract with this contractor if the city receives the required permits within 120 days of the bid opening. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you, City Clerk. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item? Commissioner Stonehouse?
Your Honor, I motion to conditionally select Smith Construction's proposal for this project with the intent to enter into a contract with this contractor if the city receives the required permits within 120 days of bid opening.
And do we have a second on that motion? Commissioner Davis?
I'll second the motion.
Commissioner Stonehouse, any discussion?
Well, I can only state, Your Honor, that it is nice to be able to save $2 million on the bid process, which the city certainly direly needs to complete the project. It's also worth noting that the city has worked with Smith to complete that portion of Lake Shore that's been done already, as well as some of the work a little bit to the south of that. And I also understand and have remember the good work that Smith has done with us on a number of city projects, as well as for the state of Michigan on various projects that they've had. So I find, even though you have a difference in the bids that might be suspect, you might wonder why is one so much higher, one so much lower. If you're familiar with the bidding process, there's often things that people do that can save money and walk forward with a better project. So I am personally very comfortable with Smith to be the project contractor, rather, for this particular signature project for the city of Marquette. Thank you, Your Honor.
Commissioner Davis, any discussion?
Yes, almost $2 million is such a significant difference between the lowest bid and the next lowest bid. And when this happens, we as commissioners need to ask some questions as to why that is. And I really appreciate the time I spent with our city manager and the time I spent with Mike Smith on the phone talking about why these differences might exist. And, so the question is, did this bid meet the requirements set by the city? Is this real cost savings? Is the reputation of the company and their quality of work suitable for the project? And in asking the questions to the staff, I've really been reassured that this is a good, legitimate bid. It passed the detailed staff review and met all the requirements. It presents no risk to the city. And as Commissioner Stonehouse said, we've used Smith Contracting previously without concerns for their work. Our city is currently experienced such a significant revenue shortfall and will be for several more years. And I just cannot in good conscience decline this bid and accept another for an additional $2 million, because it's our taxpayers who will be absorbing that $2 million.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Hanley?
Thank you. While I agree that $2 million is a very big difference, and I would love to save that much money, I do want to question just a couple things that I've noticed in the bids. The problem that I have is that a lot of the places that I'm seeing a significant savings seem to be in the environmental aspects, such as the turbidity curtain. I'd like to question how we are going to do that for how they are going to do that for $5,000 versus each of the other bids at well over $300,000.
I can answer that question. Well, I can hope to answer that question, or at least maybe shed some light on that. So regardless of what the cost is that's listed in the bid, they still have to abide by environmental laws and standards that we also have put in place. And they are agreeing to do that by answering the bid specs as we had laid it out. So what they charge us, they have to live up to. So that's why conditionally selecting the contractor at this point at the prices that they have stated. If it is more than that, then they have to essentially eat that cost. And that is a protection that we have as the city side. And there's also bonds there as well that protect us too.
Okay. And then, so no matter what happens in these, they have to abide by all of the different contamination specs that we stand for, correct?
Correct. And we do have staff on site to monitor such things.
Perfect. And then the only other thing is I see a lot of the stone is a lot lower. Is there a reason that they can get it at such a lower cost?
So again, it's one of those things that, with whether it's that line item or other line items, that is the cost that they are charging us. And if it does end up costing them more, they are responsible for those costs. Now, there is some speculation or some assumptions that they do have access to their own quarry, and they are somewhat local and a little bit closer in that vicinity to transport. So we do have to maybe assume that there is some cost savings with that. But as with all the other bid items and all the items listed, the city staff has taken the time to review those and make sure that if any items would be financial risk to the city, we are able to mitigate that risk, and essentially the contractor takes that on.
Perfect. And then the only other thing I would request is, I know that we do have a prevailing wage in the city, and we do check on that quite regularly to make sure that all contractors that we use are following all prevailing wages that we have, correct?
Correct.
And we fully intend on continuing to do that and to make sure that everyone is being perfectly following this, correct?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Other discussion? Pro Tem Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to lead right off of that. And let's just say a contractor does not comply with our prevailing wage policy or the environmental care expectations that we have for them. What exactly are the ramifications for that?
They don't get paid.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hill?
The concern was also raised by the Construction Council on how the contaminated material is going to be managed. Can we speak to that?
Again, the cost that they have listed out is the cost that they are going to be charging us for that. We have staff on site to monitor that and to make sure that they are abiding by the standards and the laws that are in place by local and state laws. And those are very, very valid questions that are asked of every bidder, specifically for those very important things.
And the topography surveys, do we have information about that as well? That was also raised as an issue.
That's similar, that is asked of almost all bidders, obviously, or all bidders in there, and it has passed our review process from both engineering and planning side, or community development side.
It is very disturbing to me that 20%, right? 30%? What is, my math is bad. 2 over 6, 1/3. It's 33% less. And it's not enough that they haven't been paid if this is mostly environmental damage, as noted by Commissioner Hanley, then how the damage is done. It doesn't matter if you get paid or not. And so, and I understand we've worked with them before, but it is a very striking difference, and the others were so close. And I guess I don't think the concerns would have been raised if those numbers hadn't been there. So basically, we're saying the company made a choice on how much they're charging us, and that's all we can know.
So how they bid, or the strategy that they use, and the cost factors that they put into the specific line items is something that can almost be seen as their own secret sauce, for lack of better terms, but it's essentially how they do business. And we abide by the contract that will be brought before the commission, but also with the limited cost measures that we have right here. So I do want to just mention one thing about the environmental. Now, if they are violating a permit or some other much larger environmental issue, there are other penalties and consequences for that. But from the city's standpoint, from our contract, if they are not abiding by the contract, we will not be paying them.
Okay.
I just want to make that clarification.
Yeah, and there, now, do we have, I know this is beyond, this is a little bit outside the scope of maybe what we're voting on, but the question of the long-term maintenance of this new construction, is that built, I'm sorry, I don't remember, is that built into this contract, or who's going to be watching to make sure that this, the lake moves, the lake changes, water moves things? What happens when things get moved around and pushed around? Who's going to be responsible for that? Are we then, once this is installed, now it's up to the city to manage all this rock and manage all this, it's another part of the shoreline, or is there something special about this project?
So there are obviously going to be specific, clauses in here for warranties and anything that has to do with the work that the contractor has performed. But essentially, it will be our asset, as it is our land and our project. And Dennis, I don't know if you have anything else to add on that specific instance, but that is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Other discussion from the commission? Commissioner Bonzo?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I really appreciate the questions that all my colleagues asked. It pretty much answers all the concerns that I had. I guess what's clear to me is that it would be very unwise for anybody who's doing this project with the city to be not abiding by the labor regulations and the environmental regulations and things that we have in place, provided that there is adequate enforcement. So I guess I would just reiterate, I think, what some of my colleagues already said, which is that given the size of this project and how important it is, especially being located near Lake Superior, to maybe redouble our efforts in terms of how much oversight, how much supervision we have over this project, and really make sure that all the T's are being crossed and I's dotted.
Sure.
If you don't mind, I do want to just state that, when we go through the audit process for our financial statements, and sometimes we are subject to a single audit, Davis-Bacon wages are also part of those procedures. And so we have gone through reviewing those and ensuring that we are following those standards before. So maybe perhaps it is just taking some time to let the commission know how we go forward and how we do complete that process.
Anything else from the commission? I have a couple questions.
Well, what's Davis-Bacon wages?
That is essentially our prevailing wage clause as well is subject to that, but it is a similar act and a similar requirement that is stated with federal and some state projects.
I just have, I guess, maybe only one question for our city manager. I know we've worked with Smith several times in the past, and to my knowledge, that's gone well. I just wanted to ask if we've had any concerns in the past, and if that's something you can address.
I am not aware of having any issues with the work or with the prevailing wage clause with Smith Construction or any other contractors in the recent history, and that was confirmed with the city attorney as well.
And that's what I thought, but thank you for confirming that. And just for the record, because I have been asked, yes, my name is Jenna Smith, but I have no relation to Smith Construction whatsoever. It is the most common name in the United States of America, I believe. So I just wanted to put that on record because I've been asked that several times. Okay, I don't think we have any more discussion on this. Let's go ahead and take a vote. I think this is the only one that doesn't require a roll call tonight. So all in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed?
I voted yes, but.
Okay, so that's 7-0 yes? I'm just making sure I got that right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, last item on new business, item number 10, notice of intent resolution fiscal year 2022 capital improvement bonds. This will require a roll call vote. City Clerk, could we have the background, please?
Thank you, Mayor. In order to start the process of issuing capital improvement bonds for fiscal year 2022 projects, a resolution must be approved that will authorize a notice of intent to be published. The notice of intent serves as a 45-day referendum notice in accordance with Public Act 34. This Public Act states that if 10% of the registered electors of the city file a referendum petition within 45 days of publication of the notice, then the bonds cannot be issued without voter approval. The resolution also authorizes that the city may reimburse itself for expenditures made prior to the actual issuance of the bonds. This language is needed in order to comply with federal tax laws for tax-exempt bonds. Projects proposed to be financed with this bond issue are attached. These are projects that have been included in the budget process. A final amount tally will be presented before the bonds are issued. Fiscal effect: a debt service schedule will be produced when the bonds are issued. Recommendation: approve a notice of intent resolution to issue and sell general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $6 million for capital improvements, and authorize the city clerk to sign the resolution. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you, City Clerk. Commissioners, do we have a motion on this item? Commissioner Stonehouse?
Your Honor, I motion to approve a notice of intent resolution to issue and sell general obligation bonds in the amount of not to exceed $6 million for capital improvements, and authorize the city clerk to sign the resolution.
And do we have a second? Pro Tem Mayor?
I'll second the motion.
Commissioner Stonehouse, any discussion?
Well, $6 million is a lot of money, Your Honor, and this kind of takes your breath away, but no discussion.
Pro Tem Mayor?
Just would like to point out for anyone in the public that may be just following along here that this is directly relating to the last topic that we're just on. And even though that contract wasn't for $6 million, we don't have to use up to that bond amount. But if we fall short, we have to re-go through the bonding process again.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Bonzel?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a question. So, and this is probably for the city manager. So typically, I know that in the past, our general best practice with the city has been to try not to issue more new capital improvement bonds than we retire in any given year. And if I remember correctly, that's about $5 to $6 million a year usually. So is this pretty much in line with those past best practices that we've been using?
This is taking into consideration a very specific project that had been committed in years past. So this is completing that. So I would say that's a little bit more, and I'm getting confirmation from our CFO on that as well. But it is going to be probably something that you will see changing drastically in the years to come.
Anything else? Oh, were you done, Commissioner Bonzel? I just want to make sure. Commissioner Hill.
Thank you. When we choose what we put our capital into, we're not funding something else. This community decided that we were going to fund moving the road as the lake came up and the old road was destroyed, and we put a new one in its place, which also opens up the opportunity for redevelopment, potentially then, of lands on the landward side. And I've had a lot of concerns about spending all that money on that 1 mile of our community when we could be investing this money in the roads that we use every day. But not to say that the countervailing is, well, this is incredibly important that we're able to be so close to the lake. And I just want to recognize that in making this investment years ago and tonight, presumably this is going to pass, that's where the money went. And unless you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that is my understanding, that we're spending millions and millions of dollars on 1 mile of our community. And, the community, I have had from day one a lot of concerns. I initially voted no. I'm voting yes tonight. The community seems to have, I'm listening to my constituents. This does seem to be what the community wants. But I just want to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but we're putting basically our entire capital budget, and it's going to be less than what was proposed because we just agreed to a smaller contract, but we're still putting pretty much all of our capital money into one spot. Is that true?
The bond issuance will also cover SIMP and infrastructure leading out towards the Mcclellan and Division project, housing development project out that way.
Okay, so there'll be little repairs here and there, that's what SIMP is, and then, which are needed and cataloged over time, and then there's the new development of the new housing, so we're investing in utilities that'll get to the new housing. So as long as it's clear where the money is going, as well as what the amount is, I just think we owe that to the public. Thank you.
Any other discussion? City Clerk, do we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Bonzel?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Stonehouse?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mayor?
Yes.
And Mayor Smith?
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to our second public comment session of the evening. Comments may not exceed 3 minutes per person. Please state your name and physical address unless you've already done so at this meeting. Go ahead and approach the center podium if you'd like to make a public comment.
I actually would like to thank you for the vote you just took on the bonds. The stretch of road being improved, I know this sounds somewhat self-centered, but is within about 4 blocks of where I live, and that there are a number of apartments and multifamily residences nearby that are affected by further erosion there, and it does affect their access on roads, and so I do thank you for investing in repairing that stretch of lakeshore and continuing to maintain. I know a lot of people that use that road daily, some for a commute, some for recreation, but I do thank you for your investment in this and for your wise use of our funds. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
Hello. Alex Cowles, 109 Fisher. I just wanted to say thank you for enlightening me on a lot of what's going on in terms of the housing. I just wanted to give a little bit of why I even came here. My roommates and I had been on the verge of homelessness for 2 months. We kept almost losing our house over, well, no, excuse me. We kept losing every house that we applied for over and over and over. And it was frankly traumatizing to have to go through that. And once I saw that there was so much of this happening, not just to us, but to so many other people, I felt like I needed to say something. And thank you for giving resources to potentially voice our concerns to things that will be a little bit more useful in the upcoming months and such, years, whatever. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Commission members, again, Mike Smith, no relation to Mayor Smith nor Smith Construction, just to make that clear. I just, a couple of things I'd just like to cover that it does baffle me a little bit, and I appreciate the decision that you made this evening. Obviously, you're trying to be as fiscally responsible as you can be with taxpayer dollars. I can absolutely appreciate that. I just, I really think that there are some discrepancies that are of note. And for example, the removal of contaminated material, which is required by the bid specs, the tipping fees alone are $50,000. And it is quoted for $7,296 by the low bidder. I'm not sure how that math works out. Not claiming to be a math genius, but I think something's at issue with that. Dust control. And again, the estimated cost of the project was approximately $7.3 million. All four of them came under that $7.3 million. Three of them were within $100,000 of each other at about $6.3 million. And the low bidder, again, a third of the cost. Dust control, $1,000. Everybody else was much in excess of $1,000, significantly. Signage, $1,000. Again, everyone else was significantly more. The installation and monitoring benchmarks, $2,500. Those came in north of $13,000 for everyone else. Turbidity, which I think should be an extreme concern, and I appreciate that it's going to be monitored, but $5,000 compared to $300,000 for the other three. There's something amiss with this, and I certainly hope that if there is an issue with any of these things being followed, that certainly this commission will take action in order to correct whatever problems that may arise. So again, I'm concerned, as I know, I'm sure you are, but obviously you have to make a budget. So thank you for your time.
Anyone else for public comment?
Hi, Jana Fox with Marquette Habitat. I just wanted to thank everyone for all the hard work that you've put into this. Affordable housing is not something that the commissioners can solve. It's not something Habitat can solve. It's not even something that a private developer can solve. However, private developers, the private sector, and that is not known to necessarily take the good of everyone into account for a lot of projects, not just beyond housing, but for a wide variety of things. So the government, public and non-government organizations really need to step up and do what they can to, take the reins on these issues. So I know there's not huge amounts. You can't just put a house there and everything's solved. And I know you put in tons of work with the ad hoc committee, so I appreciate that. And hoping that in the future, we could possibly work with the city to try to, make some forward movements in the affordable housing in the city, and then maybe really lay some groundwork for countywide, affordable housing networking, stuff like that. So thank you everyone for your hard work, and Habitat looks forward to being a part of the scene, as we have been for 30 years, but affordable housing never had such a buzzword in our community. And I'd like to remind the community that we are mostly run by a very passionate staff and a ton of volunteers. So if someone really wants to put their boots on the ground and pick up a hammer, we are the place to come. We are able to do our affordable housing because we use a ton of volunteer labor and donated product, as well as people shopping at the Restore. So that's how one small developer can afford affordable housing. Normally, if it was a private developer, that could be subsidized with a lot of state or local dollars in some capacity, but those are very difficult to come by. So I'm hoping that with the Redevelopment, that it's not just a hope and a wish, but something very concrete that you can hold them to, saying this is what we need with our community. And then, they'll have to work out the numbers, but certainly there's room for a mixed use. And we just really hope that there's plenty, cut out in the plan for affordable housing, and that the city commission will keep them to that. I do know that when I spoke to the foundation, we asked them what happens after it's approved, the plan, how do we keep affordable housing in there? And it was kind of, again, the answer of a hope and a wish. So I really hope that behind the scenes, there's something that will keep them to, making sure that's in there and it doesn't just disappear. And if they have to reach out to Habitat, if they have to reach out and get more, MEDC money or some kind of funding, we would be there to talk to them for sure. Thank you.
Last time, I promise. I'm too tired for hoping and wishing. I think I speak for the 30-somethings in this room and the ones that already left due to prior commitments, that we're exhausted by the patronizing platitudes that we keep receiving. We're exhausted by being told to do more by professional bureaucrats. We don't get paid to do more. We don't have time to do more. We're burnt out by trying to survive with no help from our government. Since this is currently seemingly outside your lived experience, let me be clear. Our resources don't have resources. No help is coming. Political gridlock and continuing systemic failures have effectively ended all chance of relief. Our relief funds have been raided again and again to give over to corporate welfare. All we the people get, is austerity. You notice the anger in the public comment, and that's because rage is a reasonable response to material economic harm. We came here tonight because we are angry, because we have been told that local government is where change happens. But I guess it's true that while government can do anything, it's simultaneously helpless and unable to do anything at all. I have been to every meeting on the subject of housing. I've been to every public meeting and forum pertinent to the local housing ecosystem. We watch, we learn, and we see what is happening past this facade of Midwest nice. Do not think that your perspective is somehow more enlightened from up behind that desk than it is from the people looking up from the streets. We only get 3 minutes to speak. We don't get brunch or wine dates with power brokers. So if you're uncomfortable when it gets said to you during this condensed time frame, then you need to expand the conversation. Create more meaningful ways for working class folks to participate in crafting policy. Those workday committees don't cut it. The conversation needs to be happening in more than just those isolated boards by appointment. Just look at the board diversity or lack thereof. We're here to be in conflict with you. We are excluded from the decision-making process. Remember, the rage over the Renovare project was that folks only found out the weekend before what was being proposed and voted on that Monday. Until you have effective transparency and actual dialogue with the community, not just so-called stakeholders, then we will be here desperately shaking our fists at your bored faces in condescending invocations of democracy in action. Thank you. I'm going to go home and I'm going to hug my friends because I love them. Take care.
Anyone else for public comment? Anyone else?
Hi. So outside of all of the letters, I don't want to speak for anyone else, just completely on my own. My reason for coming here tonight was because I was born and raised in Marquette, and during my time here, time after time, I keep seeing new buildings being built over and over, where it's condos that cost $500,000, it's apartments that cost $2,000 a month. I personally don't really care what happens specifically with this old hospital. That's not my issue. That's not what brought me here. What brought me here was that I wanted to see the responses from everyone here on the issues that were brought up by some of us today. And I think that a lot of you have said things that sound promising, and I just hope that some of those things do actually come to fruition, because as someone who has worked here for 10 years now, I still can barely afford to pay my rent, and that is a big issue. So I hope that something can be done, maybe not with a hospital or anything like that. I just hope that there is going to be some accountability and some response to the issues that were raised tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
Hi, I'm Miranda. I'm actually roommate with my best friend and a couple others, and I have been homeless before, but the previous time it was chosen, I was in an unsafe environment. I could not get out of the lease to get out of the environment, and I was okay with that. But I'm really glad that we took the opportunity tonight to kind of come together and initiate a really solid conversation of how we can move forward and rectify this housing crisis that Marquette is currently having. I'm fortunate enough to have the capacity and the time. So I'm looking forward to continuing coming to these meetings, continuing hearing our voices and everything, and working towards solutions and situations where where housing is not a capitalist right in Marquette, but it is a natural right for everyone. So thank you for your time. Thank you for all you do.
Anyone else? Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Brings us to comments from the commission. We'll start off with Pro Tem Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to try to be brief here and just respond to a few of the public comments. I would like to thank all the public that came here tonight and spoke to us, but also to the members of the public that are still here and have been in a meeting now with us for almost 3 hours. It's really awesome to see. And you know, even if members of the public come here and they disagree with me, the fact that you're here voicing your opinions, like, that's really incredible. Seeing people's passion, seeing what they care about, actually hearing it. I'm gonna stop on that subject, but there was one thing that was said during public comment I want to just clarify about the diversity aspect of this commission. This commission, which I believe it would have been a year or two ago when all 7 of us were initially made up this commission, first time we've had a majority women-led commission. The mayor is the first time in Marquette's history we've had a female mayor for 3 years in a row. We have 4 different generations on here, 2 different military service members. Myself is the first tribal member to ever be on the city commission. I don't know what else you would want for diversity at this point, because I think we represent this community pretty damn well. Thank you.
Commissioner Hill?
Alrighty, thank you again. Yeah, it is so good to have more conversation. Local governments where change happens, but Michigan doesn't fund local government. And that was set up 40 years ago, somewhat intentionally. We can argue about that, but Michigan doesn't fund local government. And so it is, the system was set up that changed how the taxes happen and how it changed how property taxes happen, changed how sales tax happen. So we are starved. And so we, if the state revenue sharing, so if the money that had been pooled at the state had been coming down as it should have, we would literally have millions more dollars here. And I think it's important, if you haven't lived in Michigan, this is that period of history where that's sort of, it's recent enough that it doesn't get taught, but it's what's our reality. And so it infuriates me. There is, in fact, right now, $6 billion with a B sitting in Lansing, tussled over about who gets credit, who doesn't get credit in terms of also what strings, and then there's the questions of workforce and stuff, and how do we actually, but I've been at meetings where people are like, we have all this money and we don't know how to spend it. That's where we are now, and that's because of the federal government's response to COVID. So there's federal government, and then also because the federal government, gave us those stimulus checks, put investments into back in the investment, the IJA, whatever that stands for, I can't remember now, Infrastructure Act. The government has been putting the money forward. It's stuck. It's going to get shaken loose in the next 6 weeks. As Michigan goes through its final budget. So we're going to actually, we were at a meeting, there was a Michigan Municipal League meeting where they told us repeatedly, and at the convention last year, we're actually going to have money to spend for the first time. We haven't had money to spend for decades in municipal government. So you're not wrong, and in fact, it's almost here, but in shorting us, it is also creating great harm, as evidenced by what you guys have talked about. So that's the big picture of what we're all operating in. And as was said by President Johnson, we absolutely need you to come and tell us, help push us in the right direction. That's a role, and it's an important role, and you are doing a good job. Thank you to the Construction Council folks for raising those important issues. It sounds like, if nothing else, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and we are going to have a lot more sunlight on that project, and I appreciate that. And then here we are at summertime, the day after Memorial Day. I got to attend the services yesterday at both Park Cemetery and the cemetery on Wright Street, and they were, I'm glad we take that moment every year to thank those who have given their lives for our country. So thank you and I look forward to these future conversations.
Mr. Stonehouse.
Thank you, Your Honor. Government work is hard. The work that's done at a local level is especially hardest because it pays very little, if anything. So when Commissioner Bonzell says, look at a committee and become a member of that committee, that's not a throwaway. That's the entrance. That's how you can do things, like if you're on the Presque Isle Parks Committee, for example, or Parks and Recreation, or the Housing Committee when we had that going. All of those things do good, critical work, before it gets to this level to make the decisions you saw us making tonight. So don't go away here with the idea that this is just something we're throwing at you. Nothing could be wronger than that. We are giving you the key. Use it. Again, government is hard. State of Michigan, they're the villain. I'll be flat out, they're the villain. They owe the cities in the state of Michigan $14 billion of revenue share money they have withheld over the last 10 years. That's, again, 14 with a B, and the chances of us ever seeing that are zero. When we talk about affordable housing, a component of that is obviously the rental program housing, short-term rental, and indeed the House Bill HB 4722 is the one that you should be fighting. But that would take off the cap completely. So we go from 250 that we maintain now to an unlimited number. Now, how does it hurt us? How does it hurt this city? Because each one of the 250 now, most of those are already owned by folks that don't live in the city. They're simply used as a rental property. So now we're going to have another 1,000, 2,000 that the same thing happens to, which is our housing stock now that's taken out of that resource base that will eventually, in one fashion or another, could have become affordable, could have allowed somebody else to buy something else becomes affordable. You understand how the houses move around and the opportunities present themselves. That will be taken away from us. So please call your local member of the House of Representatives, ask for that bill, comment on it. Please contact Senator Ed McBroom. He's the representative for this area. He is very pro taking the caps off. Again, he is very pro and fully in support of taking the caps off. So that means that 250 goes away and we have 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever, and magnify that through every Michigan city. Now, why is that important? It's important because right now there's 350,000 people in the state of Michigan that do not have affordable housing. 350,000 in this state. And we only have a little over 10 million population total in the state. Now, why is that important? Because the value of building that affordable housing that's needed is $45 billion. And that means on top of that, each of the municipalities that may be part of that effort would be required to pay somewhere around $150,000 per unit in contribution. So in other words, providing utilities, water, sewer, et cetera, to the property for that the structures could be built. We're not sitting here with $150,000 to try and, I mean, we don't, you know where the money is in this city, and you know how we struggle to put budgets together and how we try and stretch that money to do the best we can for everybody. But please, you really need to understand that. I would also ask you to do one other thing too, is to think of the Marquette Housing Commission. Because when we look at low-income housing, which is a different component than obviously affordable housing, that's the player in town. They're the people with the pipeline to the federal government. They're the people that can make things happen within their realm. But that's an important realm that we can't forget about. But thank you very much for showing up and showing up, for coming and sharing what your problems are, how you see the world, how we possibly can help. That is really important to everybody in this room. Thank you.
Commissioner Bonsall?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to try to be brief because I know it's late, but I'll share my vote explanations on Facebook and on my website later, as I always do. But I think in response to all of the things that we heard tonight about, especially about affordable housing, the anger, I get it. I'm angry too. I mean, to be honest with you, that's part of why I ran for the city commission in the first place in 2019, right? I mean, I was angry and frustrated and tired of hearing the issues that I would talk about with my family or my friends or other people who grew up in Marquette, who wanted to come back to Marquette, just not getting discussed in this room, at least not as often as they should have been. So that's why I ran for the city commission. Still here 3 years or 2.5 years later. But all that to say, I want to echo what Mayor Pro Tem Mayor said. Really thank you all for coming, and thank you especially for staying to the end of the meeting. You don't need to make your voices heard, but I do think it says something important. And I'm definitely going to be thinking a lot about what you all said, and please reach out. I'd love to talk with all of you about any of your concerns, your experiences, what we might be able to do in Marquette with housing moving forward. I choose, and I recognize that I have privileges that other people don't have, like most of us, right? But I choose not to be cynical. I think it's easy to give up. It's easy to, and sometimes in the short run at least, it often feels better to kind of give up and be cynical, especially about something that can often feel kind of distant, like government and politics. But cynicism, in my view, is the enemy. And I think actually if there's one thing, I'm kind of generally part of the same generation, most of the folks that talk tonight. I think if there's one thing that's going to stop our generation from solving all the world's problems that we've kind of inherited, it's cynicism. I think absolutely nothing is even a close second. We have so much potential, and we can do a lot of good as a generation. And I would love, when I was like 18 years old and I was on the student council at Marquette High School, I came to one of these meetings and I was talking with one of our former mayors. And he was an older gentleman who'd been on the commission for many years. He'd been mayor several times. And he said, if you ever want to run for city commission, even if it's this year, the age of 18, talk to me. I want to help you. I want to give you some advice. I want to talk to you about my experience. And it was a few years later that I ran, but he'd made good on that promise in the end. So I want to extend the same offer to all of you. I think that having heard all of you speak tonight, I think that there's several people who I heard talking who it would be awesome to see you all sitting up here someday and advocating for the issues that you care about that affect you and your loved ones. So, but I really think that we need to try and, as hard as it is, we need to try and not be cynical. We need to try and keep getting back on the horse and keep trying, because ultimately there's nothing that's worth doing that we can do unless we do it together, unless we all kind of pitch in and make our voices heard. So I'll just leave it with that.
Commissioner Davis?
I too want to thank those of you who came to talk about the housing issue, and such heartfelt messages that we really heard. And I was watching the audience, the rest of the room, while each one of you were talking, and most had their heads down. Kind of like, oh my God, this is really, really a horrible problem that we have. And Tony Boyle, I am sorry that you have rage, but I also have rage that there's not much we can do. We're trying our best. I have rage that this is happening to all of you. It's happening to my children. They talk about there, but for the grace of God go I, and I think for me, it's there, but for the grace of when I was born go I. I just happened to be a little older and born at a different time. But I watch you go through it, and it hurts. And it hurts to see what others of your age go through. We care. The cynicism, yeah, but you know what? It's easy to blame someone else. It's easy to blame those of us who are sitting here and the government. But I really appreciate you coming here so that we can start working together. And I heard that message too, that you were glad you were here, and I'm thrilled that you're staying. And is it Veranda? Veranda, yeah. I really was happy to hear you say that you're going to come again. And since you're thinking about coming again, and those of you who want to continue to learn more about the city, and the more you learn about the city, when the more we learn about you, the more we can address this issue and others. So let me tell you about some special meetings that are coming up. On Monday, June 13th, we will talk about the Cliff Dow property with Mr. Taylor. You live near that area, and I bet you're very interested in what's happening there. On Wednesday, June 15th, we'll talk about surplus land, and maybe some of that surplus land could be sold for housing. On Tuesday, June 21st, we're talking about the operating millage. Now, whether you're paying taxes, property taxes or not, this is a very extremely difficult. I mean, we want to talk about difficult decisions that this commission is going to make. This one really, really hurts. And each one of us commissioners give our heart and our soul to what we're doing up here. So join us in that. And let's get our city to where you want it to be and where we want it to be.
Commissioner Hanley?
Thank you. I also want to thank all of you, but not as a platitude because you came here and took your own time. I want to thank you all for opening my eyes again and again as each one of you spoke to the real homelessness problem we have here and the reality that it is for many of you. I can say with a scary amount of certainty that if I wasn't lucky enough to buy my house when I did 7 years ago, there's very little chance I'd be sitting on this board because there's very little chance I'd be sitting in this room. I don't think I'd be a City of Marquette resident. I don't think I could have afforded to stay at that point. It is by a lot of luck that I fell into the house that I did, and I'm happy that I did so that I can try and be here to help. What I do ask is that after the meeting, you stay so I can give you a card. I'd love to meet with you and actually talk with you about some of the ideas you had and why some of them can work and why some of them can't and what we can do going forward. I really do want to try to make a difference on this. And I think the only way we're ever going to make a difference in the city is if we're all working together rather than hopefully, like, you listen to us at meetings and then we don't talk again until the next meeting where you tell us another thing. I think working together in between is what we need to be doing. And I'm willing to meet with you on your schedules, knowing that we all have jobs and things outside of here. I want to make sure that you know that I want to work forward toward this. It is important to me that my son, who is 5, can live here at some point if he wants to. Right now, I highly doubt that's an option. Other than that, I do want to stay. I know Commissioner Stonehouse mentioned the Housing Committee. There are 2 vacancies on that committee right now. And that committee is something that I think all of you would be phenomenal on. I know it is a time commitment. I don't think they meet a ton. It's
once a month. The Housing Commission.
The Housing Commission. It's once a month that you can meet with them. And you could make a difference in a lot of these different areas. So I fully suggest that some of you apply to get on that so we can appoint you and you can start making a decision or a difference immediately in that aspect.
Where you apply. I used to live at Pine Ridge. I'm interested.
It's there's applications on our city website and you can send them in and then it'll be put into the city and then it will get passed on through to all of us. Other than that, I think I am good. Thank you very much again.
I think most of what I was going to say was covered. I did take some notes of what I wanted to say, so I'm going to read it. But I really do appreciate, especially the new faces in the room, for coming tonight. I don't necessarily have answers to all of your questions or issues, but I'm looking in your eyes as you're talking about your own issues and the issues of people you know, and I hear you, and I'm committed to trying to find solutions, and I'm looking to you to help with that. So please keep showing up. It doesn't have to be here. You can I would be glad to have you here, but there are other places that you can also show up and make your voices heard, and I think we can work together to make that happen. What I do want to say, though, is that I personally do not respond well to intentional conflict. I'm more likely to take action with viable solutions, joint understanding and compromise, and this commission can vouch for that because we are in tough situations where maybe we have conflict on this board, and I don't respond well to that. They're kind of smiling. I'm like, we need to find a way to come together, have a positive conversation. We may disagree, but at the end of the day, we have to find a way to compromise, and I would just extend that same expectation to the community. We're human beings, and unless we find a way to work together, all of this is for nothing. That's what local government is. We need to hear your, ideas, your issues, and then we can go from there. You obviously can say whatever you want at public comment. That's your right. Unless you're, intentionally swearing or doing something that's within our rules, you can come say whatever you want. But I am far more likely to act on what folks say if they're willing to have a productive, reasonable conversation that impacts our community in a positive way. So I just want to leave you with that. I would be willing to listen and talk with anyone if that's something that you think you can do. City Manager?
Just a few things. If you are interested or you cannot find the link for the board and committee applications, please stay after and I'll grab your email address and send that link on over to you so that you can have a direct access to that. It is, just so everybody is aware, if you would like to follow along in the directions, it is on the city's website. If you go to How Do I and you go to Apply For, and it's the second option, and it is board and committee opening. And that is how you can get to that link directly. And you can peruse and see which boards and committees have vacancies and what would pique your interest and feel that you could really serve us well for. So please stay after if you'd like me to do that. And then also, June 8th is the next community office hours, and that is at Peter White Public Library. That is a casual seating, have a casual setting, have a cup of coffee, sit down and just talk and share your experiences, or ask some questions, or just come and visit. I do have a couple of people here that come quite frequently, and I do enjoy hearing from everybody at that point. It is, again, June 8th at Peter White Public Library from 10 until noon. And I believe that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 9:08 p.m. Thanks, everyone.